We start recording. I will just like randomly go to Google and search for React. So the next 5 weeks, it will be me and Christopher mainly teaching you React. So I will just try to give you an introduction about React and just get like a hands of it. So who here has some experience with React? Like never heard about React or yeah, of course. No cheating, only the new people.
We heard about React, but we didn't know.
Okay, so on the spectrum, so until now you studied front-end purely. After that you moved to Node.js to build APIs and to build the backend of websites, and after that you moved to databases, which is just how you write data. It's not really related to web development. You can like put a database anywhere, basically. You can put it in a kindergarten, anywhere. So React, so where in the spectrum React really fits? React is a framework, like for example Express or something, but not really for doing backend or databases or anything. It's for the front end. So you'll be using React to build your front end purely. So React doesn't really have anything to do or concern. So if you have an API with Node and you have an HTML and CSS and JavaScript before, you can switch them with React. So React doesn't really concern itself with anything around like how you do API and stuff. React is purely, I have 5 divs, I want to put them in the screen. So React is purely a presentation layer, purely just a way to show pixels on the screen. So it doesn't have anything. So when you hear React, it's just something to build user interfaces, like the user interface, the building blocks of it. And as you can see, it's a JavaScript library. So some people say it's a framework, it's a library. We don't really care, but it's something you get from npm, like any JavaScript library or framework, and you use it. And you can see here there is like in this marketing page, there is these 3 things. There is declarative, component-based, and learn once, write anywhere. And just to give you a hand of these 3 things, so declarative means you will not be, so until now we have been building like JavaScript and you have been like really doing everything by hand. So if you have a button, or for example like the movies exercise that you get a long time ago, where you need to fetch JSON and after that create UL and LI by hand and attach them. So this is imperative because you are telling the computer exactly what to do at each step. It's like put some salt and after that put this. It's like a recipe. But React is more declarative. What does it mean? You declare what you want as a result, and React will find a way to go there. You know what I mean? So instead of saying, oh, I have like, I want this food, I need this, then this, and this, I go to the supermarket, like you do, create a URL, fetch the JSON, No, with React, just say, I want this dish. So you kind of describe the dish that you want, and React will find a way how to kind of make you both and the computer happy. Kind of. So this is declarative. Instead of being concerned with the steps, you are concerned with what do you want as a result. So you describe your result. It's like, for example, a map and a for each, or a for loop. In a for loop, you say an I, and you say I++. So you are literally telling the computer what you need, like the steps. You increment I, and after that you say array of I. But then in the map, no. In the map, you say map over this array. And JavaScript will like do it for you. So this is the difference between being declarative and being imperative. Imperative is the other word. Imperative. So this is declarative. So React is like more on the other spectrum, like a map, like a way, like a descriptive way of telling the computer or telling the front end what to do. Component based is that we will be building components. So until now, I have this diagram I usually show. No, yeah, this one. So what I mean by component based is like most of the time. Oh, it's just casting the.
It's casting on the Chromecast.
Yeah. Should I stop it? Just a second. Just I was casting the desktop only.
Are you recording?
I am.
Okay.
I did run OBS. So now we say desktop and cast. Yes, so this is close. So for example, what I really mean by component based is like if for example you want to build a YouTube website, not for like a fully fledged YouTube website, but just like you can do this because just list of videos and a video player. So you can do that, just fetch some JSON, which is list of videos and display them in URL and analyze. If you really want to do that now, at least like maybe some of you know React and component based, but I think most of you, they will do it this way. They will just like write the HTML, the skeleton, after that write some CSS. We are not really concerned with CSS because it doesn't really change. We're only concerned with HTML and JavaScript. And after that, you will write some HTML. You finish your HTML, you go and jump and you write your own JavaScript. Which is just like, oh, add an event listener to this button, and add an event listener to this button, and then add like kind of, yes. And this doesn't really scale really well. What I mean by scale is not like performance-wise, but scale means like the more you introduce features, the more you need to carry knowledge in your mind. So adding something here involves knowing the whole page. Because you cannot mess up with this event listener, because maybe this has an ID. So you need to be careful of not doing ID collusion. So there's like this complexity. And imagine like in a huge website like Facebook or Twitter or something, or Netflix, no one is able, like even like really good engineers, they are not able to carry this complexity. So the way we do it is by going component based. What I mean by component based is splitting your UI or your code into smaller units. And these units can just communicate together instead of really showing up everything. And so instead of having like YouTube, like the header and the upload and the video and the list together in the HTML, you actually divide them. So you can say, I have a header, I have a video player, I have a video details, I have comments, I have video list. So you divide them like using sort of a structure or a logical structure. The way you divide them is really up to you, as long as it works for you. You know what I mean? It's something to like, it's the main reason why we went from the monolith and just having everything in one file to component based is so you can cut complexity from your mind. So you will have like small things. So for example, in this header file, you will have like a button with YouTube and this menu. And here you have also a button and stuff. But these two, they really don't have anything to do with each other. You can literally delete this header component and the web page will not be affected. In the other side, if you delete something, you need to be careful and check JavaScript if this button depends on this or something like that. So this is more of a component model. This doesn't have anything to do with React, but this is more of a trend happening now in the front end for the past like 6 years or 7 years. People are going more component based. And what they really mean by component based is just splitting the UI into smaller chunks. So you can literally replace this by new version instead of messing with your site. Or for example, you want to make the video when you scroll collapsible, like YouTube does now, smaller.
Yeah.
You don't need to change anything. You just change the video component. So this is the idea behind it. It's like you'll be concerned with smaller code, smaller chunks of code than really carrying the whole complexity in your mind. And when we go to the React land, we will be doing this. So React allows us to build components. So the same like kind of logical structure, we will do it in code by building components. And this is why React is component based, because it allows us to reuse that mindset about like having components. So for example, we can have a header, video. It looks like a div, kind of. But this is something, so in your HTML, you will have a video, but React will know, oh, this is not a normal HTML tag. This is my tag. So React will go and convert it. We will see exactly in action how we will build that. But this is mainly what does component model really means. So if you see other frameworks like Angular and Vue and stuff, they have the same structure, but they just do syntax differently. But the same thing applies to all of them, which is the mindset. It's only the implementation that changes. Like every language has a for loop, but they just do it differently. Make sense? And there is the third point, which is learn once, write anywhere, which is just a fancy way of saying React can run in multiple environments. So some people build websites with React, some people build like PDF viewers in React, some people build mobile apps in React. So React has this nice thing that allows you to have the same code and run it in mobile apps. So you can really build a mobile app with the same code base as a website, We will see in action after that what does it really mean. And this is an example of a component. We'll build our own component just in a bit, but this is a simple example. So you can see here.
So React components can also handle the responsive layout.
No, React doesn't concern with anything. So you will see that React main job is to get something, to get some data. For example, you have a list of movies, and you want to render allies of that list. React will does that. Anything that you used to do with CSS, React doesn't really take a lead on that. You know what I mean? I said it. I didn't mention CSS. CSS stays CSS. React doesn't interfere with CSS. Okay, so it's a mental shift from building everything in one page into splitting the UI into smaller components. This is the main job of React. As per coding, nothing really changed. Make sense?
Yeah.
So this is a small example. This is a component called hello message. So you will use it in HTML by using hello message. You can see. So this is like our own new tag now. So you can build your own tag. Instead of just running on div and section, you can build your own tag. And why React can detect that? Because we have a class called hello message, extends React component. We'll go in a bit about extend and React component. And you have a method called render. And React will invoke this render method for you. And here you can see that you are returning HTML. Inside JavaScript. Technically, this is not valid syntax. Yeah, because you cannot write a div in JavaScript like this. But React has sort of a trick. So React will convert this code into a different code and run it. So this is more of syntactic sugar. And what I really mean by that is like, if you write like a div like this, so let's say you have like const x equal div so React will convert it to this. So all these divs or sections, React will convert them to a create element div. So we don't really care what this, like, you don't really need to understand this. We can talk about it after. But the idea is like this is not valid syntax, and it's called JSX, JavaScript XML. But before really running your code in the browser, every time you change your code, React will be responsible of converting these divs into function calls. Make sense?
Yeah.
So if someone will ask you why it's not valid syntax, oh yeah, but React transpile, we call it transpile because it's converting from X to Y. Transpile my code from this to this. And even if you put like a P here, it will be create element and inside it another create element. Because it's a difference. Yeah. Yeah. React, it's like you say document.create element.
Yeah.
But you say React.create element. We will know the difference exactly why React introduced its own create element, but this is just a hint to keep in mind because they use it in interviews a lot and stuff. Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. And they are here saying about XML and stuff. So this is a small example of a component. So I will try now to just write some React code, and we will just discuss in a bit like how we will do it. So the first thing is to set up React. Like as I said now, it's like you need this and you need to change this code. And sometimes you use classes, and classes are not supported in older browsers. It's only in new browsers because it's a new JavaScript feature. It's not old. So if you want to support it, means like you want to transpile your code. Means
I have one question.
yeah.
In the React component, we have just created we can create the tag.
Yeah. Yeah. Here.
Which is independently. Okay. If I want to attach like append child to that one, how can I do that?
We will say this is more of just this is also another hint. Try to focus exactly on what I'm saying, because I know that you will be confused with a lot of things like what this DOM means, what this document get element by ID means. But try to really scope what I'm saying and really focus on it, because we will be trying to expand and expand and expand, and by the end of the weeks we'll have a full picture. So just because I'm trying to split the knowledge into really smaller parts. Because if I would just jump here and say this is a class and extend and so just try to focus on the core things that I'm saying, and we will build up the knowledge until you will be like capable of seeing the big picture. What I meant is really if you say class just class X. It will be converted to this type of code, which is an emulation of classes in all the browsers. So we need this tool to do that. So if you want to set it up like locally, you need to do it yourself. You need to install like Babel and do like Webpack and like some shenanigans, which is like not really necessary because we're not here trying to learn Babel. We're trying to learn React.
Yeah.
Make sense? So instead, we will use a tool called Create React App. It's by the React team, so it's like Create React App. It's by the React team, as I said, and it's by Facebook. And React is built by Facebook. It's maintained by a lot of people, but it was originally from Facebook. So we will use this tool, and it's called Create React App. So the first thing to do is to I will just go to the desktop. I will say npm install -g. I want the global dependency. And we will wait. We will really wait.
Yeah.
It's npm. Oh yeah, I already have it. Sorry for cheating. So we didn't wait finally. So the way you create a new app with React, you say create React app. Just follow with me now, you will have the chance to do it yourself. So just follow with me, just absorb the knowledge. You will be able to do it yourself. And we will assist you with that. So let's say create React app. And you give it a name. It's like color switch, that's a good name. So let's say first week. So it just created, like, if you see here, there's first week here in this folder. So it just creates an app for you with all the necessary shenanigans and things. So you can just like jump and start coding instead of focusing on 70 other things that you can learn after when you are comfortable with React. Because you should never attack like two problems at the same time. They would beat you. So just once at a time. And it's taking some time.
Is it
What?
npm?
npm install -g. But if you can just follow me, you will have the chance to do it alone.
Okay.
You will have the chance to do it alone. So just follow with me now.
Okay.
Yeah, we will do it afterward. You will be able to do it. You will have 1 hour or something just
Yeah.
doing that. So no need.
Take it easy.
Yes, take it easy. We have 5 weeks.
Still over.
So now I can go to week. It's called first week. And this is so I will open code here. So you can see the structure here is there is yarn.log. It's like npm, but they prefer to use yarn. There is a readme, we don't care about that. There's git ignore, we don't really care about that. 2 important folders. So node modules is just node modules, the biggest thing in history. And we have source and public. So public is just a folder where you can put your public things. Like if you have images, stuff like that, you have like index.html, things like that. So this is public. And we have source. And source is like, you will spend like 99% of your time here. Source is just like the source of your application. You will see here that there is like many things. I will go and delete everything. Not everything, but all the stuff inside. I will just keep index.js, except that I will index and index.css. We like CSS. Delete. Move to trash. So we have this. I'm just deleting code. It's the best thing ever. Just deleting code. And the way we do it is we say npm start. And npm start will just like start your project. It will like do all the things like compiling your code and making it for all the browsers and things like that. So what? Yeah, and it runs the server. It doesn't really execute program, but runs the server instead. And it opens even a new tab for you in localhost 3000.
This is all part of React, so when you start React.
Yeah, you just do this once for
project.
every project.
Yeah.
So when you start, for example, if you have a project that lasts for 2 years, you do it once,
Yeah.
and you keep developing. So you don't do this like every time.
Yeah.
This is just for creating like the skeleton of the project. So we are just creating the skeleton of the project. So every time you start a new project, you do that.
Yeah.
But now we will be just coding. So, and it's empty. We just have. If you can just follow me, please. So we have an empty file. It's sort of empty, but it's empty. So you can see here there is 2 imports. And if you check package.json, you will see here React and React DOM. Make sense? And we are importing them here. So what's the role of these 2 dependencies? I think you are already familiar with like npm, and so this is mainly we are importing code from other developers. This is what we are doing. We are importing code from the developers. In this case, it's React and React DOM. So why we need 2 dependencies instead of 1? Why we have React and React DOM? Because of the thing that I said about writing once and putting React in running React in multiple environments. So the first one is React. And what does really React allow us to do is creating components. So you can describe that I want a component called hello, a component called user, a component called video list, a component called X, a component called Y. It's like Facebook has like over 10,000 components. Like you can have like thousands of components. And React DOM comes in hand. So React DOMs convert your components into the browser native element. So every time you see, for example, every time you see a div, so hello, React will find hello here, and know that hello contains a div with hello, a message. Make sense? So this is a more of a description. As I said, you are describing, like remember when I said declarative? You are describing, you are not really saying, I want hello, and this variable next to it props, and inside the div, and inside the hello component. You are describing to React. So React package helps you describe. React DOM helps you convert what you described into native and pixels.
So both are the different libraries?
They are 2 different libraries. They work hand in hand. They work together. But they are independent because they do 2 different roles. One is helping us describing components. The other one is helping us putting components inside HTML. You can see here. We're rendering, so React DOM that render. Because you can build components, but they will be never in the screen. Because you are just saying, oh, I have this recipe, I have this recipe, I have this recipe. React DOM is responsible for converting them to made things, pixels. And for example, there is something called React Native that converts these into native mobile apps. And there's React PDF that converts these into PDF. So it's just like, this is kind of like describing what you want, showing the result.
But it doesn't, like, does it return anything, or does it put like the hello message into?
It does, it just puts this inside this.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really return anything. Because this is like asynchronous, this doesn't run immediately. Sometimes you have like thousands of components. So this will take like 4 seconds or something to render. But this is mainly grabbing this component, putting it here.
In the hello example.
In the hello. And what I really mean by that is that, so let's just give it a try. Let's give it a try. So I will have a public HTML file. It's kind of looks scary a bit, but it's just normal HTML with some best practices. But what's really interesting here is we have a body and we have a div called root. Make sense? Just a normal div. There's nothing to do with React. And if you see here, you will see this div here, but it's empty, nothing there. So we will take our React components and put them inside the div. This is the idea. You give your React components to a host, and in this case, the host could be a div. Could be I can create a div inside it and put 2 React components inside it, or I can put it straight away in the body. But it's a convention that we put it in the div. You will understand after all why we do that, but this is the basic idea. So we imported React and React now. Make sense? Let's now start by creating a component. And I said the way we create a component is like saying class and giving it a name. And the name should be always capital. Start with capital letter. So React can see if you name it div, React will be able to differentiate between div and div. Because div means the browser div, and this means like custom div. So this is why you should always start with this. This is the only, it will give you like weird error messages. If you say div or hello message without H, it gives you weird messages. So let's say we will just say hello user. Okay? We say extends react.component. I think you are familiar with the word extend. I'm not sure if you are or not. Yeah, you inherit. What does it mean is like you create a class. So did you ever like create an array? Yes, you did. You always create arrays. But sometimes you literally say this. You literally say const x equal array, and you will be able to say x.map. But where is the map coming from? Like, how? Because every array, when you create it, it will inherit things from the array prototype. So it's just like a way of getting other people's code. So someone, like which is the Chrome team in this case, build map and build filter. So array is linked to this, so it can use it. So the same thing here. We are saying hello user, and we are sending from React component. That means that my hello class, even though it's empty, but it will have some extra power. Why? Because it's taking some code from React component. Does it make sense? We will see exactly what does it take. It's just like a few methods, but we will see in a bit. And inside the class, what's really mandatory is to define a render method. Can you name it something else? Not really. Why? Because React will create a class and say .render. So this is like a convention between you and React. React is telling you, put your output or your HTML inside the render, so I can call it after when you are ready. So it's like a special name. It's like when you say like to someone, we will meet next to Nopod. Like Nopod is, you cannot just name it, go to another place and expect him to know you that you are there. You already established like a protocol. But it's the same thing here. Render is like a special method, not really a special method, but a special name for a method, because this is just a normal method or normal function.
So that render is from the React component?
Not really, but React will need it. So even though we can do this, we can still, because what you define inside the class, when you create new properties, new methods, they don't have anything to do with this.
Okay.
So afterward, we will see that we have like something called this.props and this.state, and they are coming from React component. But these methods are defined by us. But it's more of a protocol between us and React saying, please, if you want to render anything to the screen, put your output in the render method. So I can pick it after when you want to render your stuff. Make sense? So I will do something here. I will say return a div, and inside it I will say a p or an h2 tree, and I will say hello Yunus. Make sense? Now we created a component. Let's go to the browser. We still can't see anything. Why? Because now we have a recipe how a component should look like. Like, oh, this looks like this and stuff. But now we are missing rendering it. And the way we do that is React DOM has a render method on it. Okay? And it takes 2 parameters or 2 arguments. The first one is like, what do you want to render? The second one is where you want to render it. Let's say I want to render X. I don't have X yet, but we want to render X to what? I will do document dot get element by ID root. Remember, I say const my root and put it here. So now I solved like 50%, which is where I want to put it. Now, what do I want to put there? So I want to render this hello message. And the way you do it, you just do like this. Hello or hello user. And it's like an image tag. You don't need to close it. You can do this. But it doesn't have any children. So we only do a self-close tag. So you literally copy this and you put it here. And in the screen we get hello units.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
I don't get how does JavaScript know like the variable name called like, you know, smaller than sign and then hello or like.
What do you mean? This one?
Yeah. How is that a variable in JavaScript?
This is not a variable, but so this will be converted to this React. So I will just write it down here.
Because it's like a class when you define it that is.
Yeah, so this will be like this. React dot create element. And it's empty because you don't have any properties. So this one, React will transpile it into this. So this doesn't really run. So it needs to be transpiled. And if it's a div here, it will be transpiled to a string instead. This is how React differentiate. If you, for example, put hello with small h, it will be a string here. Because React will say, oh, the browser provides that.
What's that?
It's like, if you put a small capital here, it will say, React have 2 mechanisms. If there is a capital letter in the beginning, it will understand that it's a custom component defined by you. If there's a smaller letter, it means it's a host environment component, which is like a div or section or a main. So there's 2 different things. There's what the browser provides and your custom components. Because sometimes you will mix them. For example, you will have a hello message, a div inside it, and we can have a hello message inside it. So React will run through it. If it starts with a capital letter, it's my component. If it starts with smaller letter, it's a browser component. Does it make sense?
Do you have any example of a browser component?
Yeah, a div.
Okay, yes.
So for example, this div would be converted to React dot
Yes, I get it.
create. It's like div. And why it's a string now instead of component? Because it's not a variable anymore. In our case, hello world, it's a class, as you said. So React will convert it to this, and after that it will, inside create element, it will say new hello world, and it will co-render and get the output and put it in the screen. But this is internal to React. And if it's like this, a div, it will just use the browser div. It doesn't need to create anything.
And if that browser component it doesn't exist, what will happen? Like,
If you put something that doesn't exist,
that
React will
exist,
say,
it's small letter.
yeah, if for example you will say hello user 2,
Yeah.
like hello user 2 here,
And then,
React will say it's not defined because it's a variable at the end.
yeah.
As Benjamin said, it's just a variable. But React, so React, instead of letting us create element, it gives us this syntactic sugar.
Yeah.
So we can just do it fast, like, straight away. But at the end, there is nothing called hello user. It's just a class, and we say create element. Make sense? And something really important is that, so I would say console dot, I would say const h equal hello user. I will just render it. Sorry. And I would say const d equal div. I will console log both of them. It's weird, but so the first thing is like this div will not be rendered, and this hello user will never be rendered. We will only have one hello user here. So if I will do this, putting this here and this here doesn't mean that we will render anything to the screen. The only way to render things is to tell React render to React DOM to render that. So having these here doesn't mean anything. Okay, and if I will console log them, I already did. You'll see that you have two objects. They are not even like real. If I will console.log a div, it will be like a div. But here I'm console logging the D, which is the div, but it's not really a div. So this is another step. So instead of React creating real DOM elements, React will only, as I said, create a recipe for you. So whenever you create a hello user, React will just say, oh, it's type of, it's a React element. Key doesn't have key, props, it doesn't have properties. The type is a class hello user. Some stuff. The source, stuff like that. So if we put, for example, here, ID equal 5, or yeah, 5. You can see here props ID equal 5, properties. Props means properties. This is shorthand for props. So what does it really mean? This is called the React element. So when you create components like these or these here, React doesn't create real DOM elements. This is why I said React will only create object that describes. Oh, this is a type div, and if, for example, we open this, it's a type div. And this one is a type hello user class. So this is more of a description of what you want to render than really a real thing. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
It's like I'm describing what I want to render. And yeah, go ahead.
Is then the React DOM that render?
Exactly.
That will create
Precisely.
the-
So React DOM,
the actual
React DOM will be responsible of converting these dummy objects into like full-fledged Ps and full-fledged divs and full-fledged stuff like that. And you will tell me what happens to hello user, because it's not a div. The same thing will happen to her, because React will create hello user, and it will call render, and render will gives you these three things, and they will be put in the DOM. Does it make sense?
Which describes what is hello user.
Exactly. So React starts by building description of what you want to render when you do these. So these are not stuff that will be in the screen. These are descriptions of what should be in the screen.
Yeah.
It's like a recipe. After that, if we call React DOM with these things, React DOM will convert these objects into real objects. Real Ps and divs, sorry, not objects. But they are objects at the end. Does it make sense?
Is it only for creating like tag? The React is only for creating a tag, or we can do something else?
No, mostly React is only this.
Only
So
this?
you are already like learning 70% of React now.
Okay.
Like 70-60% of React is almost done.
Yeah,
Because React is only about rendering these things.
Yeah, because we have done in the JavaScript like how to like we can create a div using a create element.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why I will use a React? Why can't I write
Oh
in
yeah.
JavaScript?
Well, we will see that React is a beat itself after. It's like really a beast.
Okay.
There's so many things under the hood that React does. For example, when you create element, you will create real elements, but React doesn't create real elements. So if you create 1,000 of these hello users, they are just objects. So React can destroy them and create them easily. But good luck creating 1,000 divs in the browser.
Yeah.
That's like
Okay.
a whole footprint on the memory. So there is really a lot of things that you will understand while going React. This is just the beginning. So I'm not trying to sell you React, but hopefully by the end of the model you will be able to convince yourself if React is for you or not. But I would say it's probably for you because like it's a huge community. It's used by the really like most of the top companies. I'm kind of impressed that every company is using it. Twitter is using it. Facebook is using it. Netflix is using it. Like Microsoft is using it. Like it's weird that they all agreed on something. That's weird. But React is not really the best framework. There is no best framework, but it's a really good balance between like job opportunities and a good framework itself. So, but you will be able to justify to yourself why you should use it, because this is one of the hardest problems in computer science or development. Convincing yourself that this tool is useful for this job. You know, so it's really difficult, but hopefully we will be able to conclude that. Make sense?
Yeah.
So we have one extra step now. So we have components, but most of the time components are not that static. Components needs to be parameterized, like functions, because the way you should think about a component is just a function. It's like a function that returns hello, your name, hello sir or something. You give it a name, and it will return a parameterized string. We can do the same with React. And the way we do that, we just pass something here. We pass, for example, like name. Let's say Yunus. It's an attribute. In the React world, we call them props, which is a shorthand for properties. But you can call them attributes. No one can really say, oh, you need to call them props. No, it's a common dialect between developers. Because if you say an attribute, people will understand it's a div attribute. So this is the idea. So we have name here. Now we need to use it and replace this string by a name, which is a dynamic part. How we will do that? Well, yes, that's really true. I can say this, but I need to put something here, a variable. From where that variable is coming? Well, one of the nice things that when we extend React component, we get is something called this. It's the context of the class. Dot props. So this dot props contains all the properties that we have here as key value. So if we take this here and we give it name 2, or for example age, we say not 3, 25. Too small. Too small to teach JavaScript. So React, inside React you can say this dot props, and this will be what? This will be an object with name is Yunus and age is 25. So your properties will be converted to key value object. So this will be converted to this. Does it make sense? Key value. Key value. It will be an object with key value. Name, Yunus, Yunus. So if I want to get the name, I will say this dot props. What? This dot props dot name. If I will change this here to be a first name, means this change to first name and this change to first name. You get the idea?
Yeah.
React takes all the properties, convert that to an object, give it to you inside this dot props. Make sense? So this is how we parameterize components.
Can we write ID instead?
Anything you want.
Anything.
You can write anything that the browser accepts, like ID, class, blah blah blah, like value, focus, on click, all the things, plus custom ones like my name and stuff like that. So you have a mix between the standard one that you already used plus any name you can choose, like my name, first name, last name, user age, user admin, whatever. It's just English, like variables. So here I would say this dot props dot name, because it's name here. And I will say const name equal name. Just put it in a variable. And here I can say name. So. And if I will say Yunus 3, it will be Yunus 3. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
I'll just delete these. So this is the main way. So let's say we don't put the curly braces here. What will happen? It will be hello name straight away. And the way you should imagine it, if you put 4 plus 4 here, it will be 4 plus 4. So it's a string. So if you put this, it will be JavaScript. Make sense? This is why we put name here. Cool? Any questions? So let's for example create another component. Let's call it class hello user list, or let's say just user list. Extends what? Extends React component. We define a render. Make sense? What do we return? Completely up to us. It's like, do I want to render a div, an h1,
Another list.
a list, a UL, an li? This doesn't really change. React is only about splitting components. It does not have anything to do with how you return them or how you build them. It's only about splitting components. Make sense?
Yeah.
So my idea now is to, so instead of returning like this, I like to wrap everything in a parenthesis, like this. I think it's a much nicer thing to do. Easy to read. Make sense? So it's not fancy things, just like you write things and you put it like here. It's like when you put a function. So what I'm gonna do here, I will render a list. Okay? And I will say that I, for example, want to render an li inside it, but I really don't want to do it by hand. I want to be able to do it automatically, like Facebook. They have a list of posts, and they convert the list of posts into a list of component. They don't go by hand and write LIs, because maybe you have 5 posts, maybe you have 7, maybe you have 8. You did it for movies and stuff, dynamic. So how we will do that? So instead of rendering user, hello user, I will render user list here. And I will give it a list of names. So I will say users. And you always put curly braces like these because it's a variable. And you put the array inside it. The only edge case is if you have a string. If you have a string, you just put it straight away like this.
Or number?
No. If you have a number, string you can also do them like this, but you have a number, you need to do this. So string is the only exception. So if you have something, you do like this. So if you have an object, you do like this. You describe this and you put the object inside it. This is a common a mistake that a lot of people get confused because of it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's just like
Object.
split them, split knowledge. The first one is for defining an expression. The second one is for defining an object. Make sense? The first one is for defining the expression. The second one is for defining the array. So let's say here Yunus. I just want to keep printing my name. Yunus 2. sorry for not including you. Exactly. Just me. Yunus in the club. Okay, so we have user list and we have users. Now we want to render them dynamically. The way we do this is we have UL. Inside it, I want to have a dynamic mapping. So imagine that I can, so I will just render here, for example, a string, hello. And it will be hello here. So in the render, what I'm gonna do, I will say this dot props dot users. Is it clear? This dot props dot users. Why it's users? Because this is called users.
And it's an array.
And it's an array. And why it's this dot props? Because React component choose to put it in this dot props. If in the upcoming future they will call it this dot attributes, like you said, we need to say this dot attributes. So it's completely not to us at all. It's not really up to us. It's like you need to do this. It's like copying code from Saga Flow. Like you need to keep it like that. So this dot props dot user. It's an array. So I will make it simpler and I will say users. One thing, are you familiar with destructuring? Destructuring objects? Who's familiar with destructuring objects? No. It's fine, it's a new JavaScript feature. So if you have const x equal, I will use var. I like to use var in the browser because you can redefine it. So let's say x or object equal name Yunus. Okay? It's always me, I'm sorry. I removed the S, so it's not technically me then. So let's say I want to take the name from the object. I would just say name. Easy. Well, I can do it in a different way. I can say something like this. So I will like open the object and destructure it and take name from it.
That's a little weird.
It's I should repeat. So imagine that what this object really means.
Now we are going backwards, huh?
Backwards, yeah. Destructuring.
Yeah.
What does really this object means? It means that it's this. Does it make sense? Just this part, just the part on the right hand. Object means that. So I'm creating an object and taking name from it. And if this name 1, it should be name 1. Make sense? And if I will have, for example, here, if I will have name is an object,
So it is taking only the.
that key, that value,
Or it's taking the value.
it's taking the value.
Value.
Because name is the key. What it contains is the value. It's like a very object. Object is the key.
Okay.
The object, the name, it's the value. So it takes the key, the name key, and its value is hello. So if you console.log name, now it's object because it's an object now. But if we say it's Yunus, make sense? And really the nice thing is that I can go deeper. So for example, I can have an object with first, and first is Yunus. Make sense? Here I can say name. I can go one step inside it and take first from it. Make sense? So instead of like saying the object dot name dot first, I can just say destructor name and destructor first inside it.
Okay, but why we are doing this?
Why we are doing this? Because in most of the times you want to declaratively take variables from an object. Like here, instead of saying this dot props dot name, we will say name, and here we will say users. It doesn't help a lot now, but when the props grows, it will be a lifesaver. So do you think it's fine to use this, or should we fall back to the original one?
Is it easier also to take more than you
Yeah, exactly. You will just like, if you have more keys, you will just put them here,
Yeah. Okay.
which is much nicer.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? A bit?
It's good to learn this as well.
Yeah.
Structuring as well.
So you create an object, after that you destructure values from it. Make sense? So now let's say I have an array. I want to convert the array into allies. Means for each name, I will have an ally and a name inside it. Ally and a name inside it. If you remember, if you really recall your JavaScript knowledge, what's the method responsible for converting from an array to another array? If you have an array of numbers, you want to square them all. What do you do?
Map.
Map, precisely. So we want to map
Create
from a
new
name
array, yeah.
to an ally of name. Make sense?
Yeah.
Let's do that. So we will say users dot map. Map takes a function. Could be an arrow, could be not an arrow. It doesn't matter. A function. Okay? Here we will say ally. So we will put an ally inside the map. It's a bit weird, but remember, this will be converted to create element. So this is just would be a return of a function. And here we have a user. So here we can say the same rule. We say user.name. We cannot really say it like this, because it will be user.name literally.
String.
Yeah, I did something here. So I will grab a return. So I'm converting from a name to ally of name. Does it make sense? I feel you are a bit confused. No? Sure?
We'll see the output and then we'll see.
No, this is about programming. You need to predict that. You need to fully trust the code that you are running. You should never rely on the output to say, oh, it did work, oh, it didn't work. No.
Why is working?
Exactly, like why it's working. Like, we can bring a guy from outside and he will tell us why it's not. So just remember that if we have, for example, like Unison. We have Eunice and Eunice, and we convert them to ally, Eunice, and ally, Eunice too. Make sense? We converted this array to this array. Clear? So now this is an array of allies. True? It's an array of allies. So I can just put UL here, and I can mention users here. So let's get the output. Let's call it const list of users. List of users, okay? So this is the array of users. So we can put it here, but we will literally get list of users. Instead, what we should do? Curly braces. Because it's a dynamic fragment. We have something wrong. Okay? Yeah. This is a warning. We will discuss it after. So we can see here that username doesn't work. Why? Because it's an array of strings. So this literally string, this is not an object. So user is the name itself. Make sense? So now we went to like adding more complexity. So this is a list of users. Much better. I don't want to write an ally by myself. I want to use the hello world, hello user component to render the ally.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, of course.
So, list of users is an array of React.
No, it's an array of allies.
Yeah, now.
It's users is an array of
I was
strings.
talking about this.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an array of elements. So React, that must be rendered. React.render must like look at that array and say like, now I need to put this because it's just an array of something.
True. So if for example, like, so what does it do is like user list or React DOM.render, it will go to an entry point like the body, and from that entry point, it will start like exploring the whole tree. So here we have like user list, and after that user list has UL, and the UL has a list of allies. This is the description. So React DOM will indeed go to each one and create it, and when it will find the list, it will go inside the list and convert each element inside the list to its correspondent element. Because having one element or a list element doesn't really have any difference over React. It's like you have a number, 5, you square it, you say 5 times 5. If you have an array of numbers, you just square them all with a math. So
Yeah, so you could, instead of list of users, you could make an array, like literally an array.
You
and
can
just write li open close.
Yeah, you can literally make const x equal let's do that. So let's do this. Li. Just name it li, and let's say hello. What I'm gonna do is say a list of users dot push. and now we have a third item because we created this. So does it make sense, or is it like a clear example, or
I think so.
not for everybody? As you can see, do you get the idea? Because this list of users is just creating an array of LIs, as we said before.
What if you put like an object in the array, or a string, or like all the
So if you put, for example, hello, React can render strings, but it will not be an li anymore. It's just a string. If I put it, if I would put, for example,
What about an object?
yeah, React cannot really render objects. So you need to, for example, if you say test t, React will complain.
Okay. Yeah.
Objects are not valid as React children. Because React, like, what I'm supposed to do in object, say object.name or convert it to a string. So React can render elements and array of elements. This is the two units that React really understand. So React can take one element, convert it to a DOM element, to a div, or take a list of elements and convert them to a DOM element. But giving it an object or something, that's not really something React can know how to deal with.
What about an array of an array of?
Well, an array is also like count as sort of an object.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? An array is an object
Yeah,
itself.
it is.
So it's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
the same issue that we have. Like, but objects are really difficult to serialize. At least an array has a toString, but objects are a bit difficult to deal with. But yeah, so remember, you can render elements and you can render list of elements.
No, question. We have two returns there, right? We are returning lists.
Oh, but this is inside the function.
Okay. Also, we cannot put return UL with, and then before we return the li, just in one return. The UL
Yeah.
list of users outside the function. That one, yeah. Can we do that together? In just
Yeah,
one
well,
return?
you can do it, but the issue is like if you put it here,
Yeah.
if you put, for example, if you put UL here,
And then
every li will be wrapped in an UL. So that's
But isn't it possible that we can put the function inside this UL?
yes, we can literally copy this
Yeah, inside this.
and hard code it here.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
This is the common practice.
Yeah.
So you can literally take this and put it inside the.
Oh, okay. That's another way. Yeah, forgotten that is not.
Yeah.
I have like one last question. Then after the return, there is the parentheses
Yeah.
open and close. What do they do?
A parenthesis is just like so. If you say, for example, if you have 5, a parenthesis in JavaScript keeps the value as it is. It's 5. So technically 5 equal 5. But parentheses are really good for formatting and getting multiple values, kind of. So you can see, as I explained that a while ago, just in a few minutes, that here we can literally do this. Or we can do it here. We can do this. But parentheses are really good to hold sort of like unit of work or unit of expression. So I can put an expression together, but it's not really something necessary. It's more of like holding the divs and stuff together, because they are not like usual HTML. But as a matter of a feature, they don't do anything. Except if you put multiple things. So if you put 4 and 5, parentheses will only take the last value. So also some people use that. So, but yeah, exactly. We don't care. We don't use this because it's so weird. But use parentheses if you want to group expressions together in a clear way. Make sense?
How do you do that? UL under means like suppose if I give a having like React under like week 1, week 2, week 3 database, and again week 1, week 2, week 3. How do I do that?
You mean like you want to double the list?
Yeah.
Well, I can cheat and I can copy this and put it in another clause like this. This will render units 2 and another different list inside
No,
it.
it is under one UL, right?
You want a different UL.
Yeah.
Oh, so you want to render two different things.
Yeah.
So instead of rendering one parent, you want two parents. So the way you do that is a bit weird, but it works. So you do this. It's an empty tag. It's called a fragment. It's called a fragment. So now you can render a different UL here. If you put, we can put an example of an li inside it. Damn it. So these are two different ULs now. Make sense? This is an UL, this is a UL. So we are returning sort of two items here. And this is a weird syntax, but it's called a fragment. So alternatively, if you want to do it in a clear way, you can say React. You can say React.fragment. So the same way you extend a component, you can say React.fragment. So you can say either React.fragment or put this empty. Up to you. But technically the empty will be converted to React fragment. And React DOM, when it will render and find the React fragment, it will ignore it. It doesn't do anything. Make sense? Because if we, so I'll just stick with this syntax instead. I will stick with this. So if you go to this list, you can see there's two different ULs. Where is the fragment here? It doesn't exist. Fragments are only a way to tell React or signaling React that I'm returning multiple things. Make sense? Any questions? Before that, I just forgot something. I want to replace this users. So I'll just delete this weird syntax here. And delete this. Should we keep it do you prefer this syntax or this one? It's more of preference. Like, what do you prefer? More than really practical reasons. Which one? You prefer putting it here? The first one.
That you used at first.
Oh, so you put it outside and after that you just put the array inside.
Very, yeah.
This is what you like. Is it consensus? Do you all agree or? Okay. So let's say list of users. Make sense? Now I don't want to use my li. I want to make this hello users render an li. So I will go to this div, put an li here, hello name, and here instead of rendering li, I will render hello user with name equal user. Does this make sense or weird? So instead of rendering li's, we render the custom component. So we will render this one instead. So we have two names. For each name, this will be rendered. So we will have an array of hello users, then an array of li's. And we have it here because it's an H1. Makes sense? And if we add if we delete this, we have this. So now we start like composing components. If, for example, for some reason, like Facebook, they have a feed and they have like they have items. If they want to change the design of the structure or the picture of the comments inside an item, they don't need to be concerned with the other things. The same thing here. If, for example, we want to change hello to what's up or something, I'm not really concerned with like how the users are doing or how the user list is rendering. I go to this component, I change it, I save, it doesn't work. What? Yeah, just needs to refresh. So now I change the implementation. This could be really complex. This could be changing this and adding images. But what's really important is that I only change it in one place and it will propagate through all my code base. The same example with YouTube. If you want to change the video or the video list, you just go there, you change it. Everywhere is changed. No need to consider it surface like, oh, read this code, and we have an array, we are passing it here. Literally, we don't know even that it's used here. This component doesn't know even. The only thing that this component knows is like, you give it a name, it will render it. It doesn't really concern itself with anything else. Make sense? No questions?
So, more question. The second component is dependent on the first one to be able to render the mesh.
Yes. It's like a function. When you call a function, the function is dependent on you to give it its parameters or arguments. Make sense? So just think of React components as functions, but they don't return values, they return HTML. Clear? No more questions? So this is like really 80-70% of React. We are just missing something called state and lifecycle. These are the only things that we are missing. And after that, it would be mostly trying to wrap your head and really think in the React way. Because that's the difficult part, shifting from the imperative to the declarative. But overall, I think we can do some exercises or something. You can familiarize yourself with React, something like that. So let's start. So the first thing that you will do is go to create React app, follow the same steps that I did, which is creating so you will install create React app. Remember, npm install -g create React app. After that, you go to a folder that you want to create your app in. You just say create React app, you give it a name. Give it a descriptive name, and we can go from there once you are done.
Maybe you could do like the hello user, but with first name, last name, age, or something like that.
Oh yeah, you can make it an object. But first try to get up and running.
Silver, mix. Yeah.
Can we also repeat instead of
Okay, what did you do?
This
I
one.
just go and do some with the you create the in the
Okay, it is different.
Yeah, but now it's I mean,
It
next
is
one.
So it's install the packages distributed, allow you to create virtual app. And does it global?
This, yeah.
Yeah, it's global. It's global and React and Mac. It's very different.
So I have time to take some coffee. Yeah, it's too long now.
So yeah. Doesn't work.
Happy hacking, huh? My app. Yes. it sometimes doesn't accept this code that
What do you mean?
when I'm going to the directory and then I just want to start the Visual Studio Code
Yeah.
and I take code, that it's not working like it says.
Oh, because you are not. You need to go to code.
I've done that, but sometimes it's not working. And I have to go again and install that extension.
It's not an extension. It's just like it's something.
Because it works for Atom. This code that because I could use it for Atom, but when I install this
Code? VS Code?
yeah, this code it didn't work for me.
It did work. No, it was working.
What was
Whatever you
Huh?
given, like this one, they have to clone that.
No. I said just npm install -g create React app.
Yeah, I did that,
Okay.
but
I want to
after
use
that,
this.
after that,
create the
React
folder.
app
So
on
go-
NPM.
You go to a folder where you want to create your app. Listen to me, please.
Yeah, you have to open it.
Listen to me, please.
Yeah.
You will say npm install -g create React app anywhere.
Yeah.
After that, you will go to a folder where you want to create your project. I did it in desktop.
Oh, okay.
Just wherever you like. In Hacker Future folder as you like. After that, you can say, because it's available globally, because it's .g, you say create React app, space, you give it the name of your project. I call it First Week, tell it First Week exercise, something like that, first exercise, my project, anyway. Just give it a descriptive name. After that, it will create a project for you. After that, you can cd into the project and say yarn start.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Firebase one is in the big one, still it's a global, so
Yes.
you can create a new from there.
So now I have to make
You need to create a new project. Create React
So you
app.
have to do that.
Yes, I have to
install
create the first week folder first.
No.
But I see
Yeah.
create React app is not in the next step. I did
So-
npm install.
It's okay, as long as it's not a global, yeah.
I added
it's- yeah.
everything.
Okay,
Then,
that's what
but
it's saying.
I wrote the create
Okay, that's what it's saying. Okay,
hyphen
so
react
one.
hyphen a app, then first
React
React.
app. First is-
One. That's it.
And that's it, huh?
React.
Yeah. If you want to do any changes, so yeah,
Those
you
are also
can do it.
Take first.
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
You need them all?
You just need the document, the CSS and the field.
No, you can put add to that.
Yeah.
But you can remove it, you can just call it, just go on the sense.
Just this.
Yeah.
This there.
Before first.
Before
Before
first.
first.
Before first. After
And this one.
Okay.
Space.
Space.
Yeah, this
Whatever name you do.
Yeah.
That's where I will do it with you. So you can also use npx.
You're creating.
So where do you want to create your project?
Okay.
Now you will see.
Maybe
Yes,
also
I
next
know.
step.
Go
Okay,
ahead
so
and
go
create
to
a component that you did,
Just go to the desktop.
and yeah.
And what is not so done?
Okay, so now you can say
That's it.
npx.
Okay, now that's the so
Yeah.
go back. Start the project.
Oh.
Oh yeah, because you don't have the app component, so there's no.
Uh-huh.
So you just create component.
Yeah, you can
So
start
I mean,
if you don't know, just go.
Yeah, and how to make that snippet for
The reason why
I can just snippet and then
No, you should never use
No,
this.
yeah.
Just press.
There's bunch of actually. Yeah,
At least, yeah.
this one?
So now it will do two things. It will install it, and at the end it will create a project for you. So this is like you do everything in one line. I don't like to use this. Sometimes it doesn't work. So I use npm. So this will do both. Install it, create an app for you.
Okay.
Instead of create, you install and after that you say create. So when it at the end you will have a folder
you
called
use it?
specific here. You should.
A little bit, not so much.
So people who are done,
Yeah, because it's the project is already done.
Yeah.
the idea is to create, as Benjamin said, you create two components, one called list and one called list item. It's like list of users, user item, something like that. It doesn't matter. And you will have an array, but it's not an array of strings. It's an array of objects. and you will say user.name, user.firstname, and create whenever HTML structure you like. So you can create an li and inside it a div or a link as well. What?
This time do this and because it's actually.
Oh,
I have to see first somewhere.
Yeah, so if you do know, you can just go to Google and because it's your first one, so.
And what was
To
the
create a, just I have to create a simple React component. It's one here.
it is. Even like as an African, I'm
When it
like
doesn't come on, it doesn't work.
pursuing my limits.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Create React and first class or first week or whatever. It says that. Come on, my phone.
Do we need to delete the files that you deleted or
what should
doesn't
I-
matter?
It doesn't really matter honestly, but it's more like you have a clean.
npm install
Delete
SSD,
stuff.
and then you get React.
So I only keep one index.js, but
And now it says when I say create React and first
I
class.
only keep index.js.
Yeah.
Ah,
But that's me.
okay.
It's this.
Uh,
You have Windows. Okay.
yeah, I have to. When I create it says that create React as command now.
Okay. So I will do this. You want to create it here? FBX. This will do it like automatically.
Both
for
the
you.
things together.
Yeah. This will install it
Yeah, okay.
and create for you.
Yeah, but it already installed here.
Yeah, but it didn't recognize it. I don't know why Windows sometimes doesn't work.
Ah, okay. So,
So-
instead of npm install, we should just npx.
Yeah, MPX will. So with MPX you don't need to even install.
In the return?
MPX will go to the internet, get create React app and run it
Okay.
for you. So you don't need to even install it.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so what will you do?
So for me, I've deleted everything except index.js, but it's really up to you. But the main thing you'll be able to work on index.js. Just delete everything in index.js except the imports and start working. Make sense?
Yeah.
But feel free how to do it anyways you like. There is no like. Just the basic idea is to have a component that renders a list, and you have one other component that acts as a list item. And you have an object you pass as an array. So it's an array of users or array of stuff. Instead of an array of first names or array of strings, you will have an array of objects.
If you're not deleting, whether it will affect.
What?
If you're not deleting those files, so
But
is there
render
any
your
impact?
name and then start from there.
You will just like see log files.
Just
But mainly the index file is the main thing.
Yeah.
just work on document and then run that. Because when you start a new thing, just do the simplest start and then go out. Okay, now you can implement the props. So instead of the name, it will render the props.
Just give me one.
Oh, this is so
Now maybe we can open it again. Now we
why it's closing right now?
because if there is a wind, so it just closes. Oh. Mine is still installing. I don't know why it's.
I'm also in the same page.
Yeah, okay.
India is here.
Yeah. It was installing. Now it's finished. So now I'm done. So
Yeah, I'm just I'm wondering where I'm getting this one inside. You know what?
so
Just getting
Don't worry if you didn't understand what
figure out
you
where
said, I
my-
didn't understand how to use props.
from source.
Yeah.
the tip that I have a problem.
So we said that we need name, age.
No, no, first name, last name, age, I guess.
Oh, because it's not showing anyone.
You need to call it a buffer.
What we have to do, right?
No, it absolutely fine.
We have to render
Zero,
an
eleven, five.
li first
Yeah,
name, last
that's
name, and the age
No,
from an
that's
object.
Yes,
I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes. I'll try out.
Yeah, first name, last name.
Index for JS.
Or if you scroll,
Age.
scroll down.
Now we have this. And then here we can do also age, yeah.
Now, so what you can do here, it's so you can create an object instead of name and then
Guys, please try to not really like type what I did. Like try to not. Oh, he doesn't render. I should render. Try to do it on your own. This is more of an example. It's also not fair to hide it from you, but at the end, try to do it yourself. Because if you will be stuck, that's good. You need to be stuck.
Yeah.
So we see that you are stuck. So I can explain more and help more. Because the idea is not about finishing. No one cares about finishing. We're not here to deliver a product. We're here to learn. So if you learn 20%, probably it's better than 100% just by doing.
Yeah.
So
Even-
first you have to find out how do you want to show the data? How do you want to put the steps? So you can do it in array object. You can just do
I want to know, for example, this is the property of
Yeah, I'm going to do it.
where to
It's
declare
just
the
a-
object with those, where to give those values as an object.
So
So, for example, like age,
This-
API. And I want to render first name, last name, age from that API.
yeah.
Where is that?
So
They
this
don't like.
From this
Yeah, just with the
object.
and then try to do the React down thing.
You can do it
Let's see
as
if we can
object
get that
right now. It's
string
just a
to
class.
show.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
but
then
this is a
slowly you
property.
start adding the.
Yeah, it's a property
Yeah.
and object.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
So
not-
where is that object? Where is the where I'm declaring that? So I can get first name, last name,
So
and
you didn't declare it now. You have to declare it
Where?
inside the box.
inside the box
Yeah, because you said this component that object. And
contains
this
first name, last name, and age.
If I want to
As an
return,
attribute.
I'm not going to roll
yeah,
the
so
controllers.
this
No,
component
just
is
do it with there.
Yeah.
inside, yeah. So it's a property.
And then the open
Yeah,
parentheses.
Can you help me
Let's
with
use
this?
it.
Thank you.
Let's use it and then
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have to do
So because yeah, you look at the arrow,
If you
look at the arrow.
H1, it should automatically be right?
Class.
No,
Name,
you can
name,
install
name.
the topics for this.
for that, yeah. And I'll just do it manually.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's the idea.
Make that like you learn so much without making mistakes.
Age is signed with the line of memory. So I want the name to be in H1.
Yeah, you should.
Okay, so now if you scroll down, this is basically it. Like your no user class is as it should be.
Yeah, that is, it's going to return the string because it's
And H1.
Yeah,
And
H1.
H1 all,
So
yeah.
if I hold down,
You can
it's
do
going
it.
to be
You can do
outside this
that
class.
because
yeah?
inside
Could
the
be outside,
website,
yeah.
Outside the class, yeah.
you only have one element, the web validation. So you
And then
only have,
the-
yeah, you only have div or react website, and if you continue to autocomplete
Yeah.
Yeah, so now first
You have
put
to
your
install,
your class.
Which is,
Yeah. But it has to be
Where is this?
no, not like that. The bigger, smaller, like in the HTML tag. Yeah. It's in line 28.
Oh,
It's the same user list as the HTML.
okay. Yeah.
People who are about,
Sorry. Like a.
people who are about to finish, they can just finish. People if they need more time, they can just
That's fine. You can
grab
do that
that.
like this.
Ah.
So up to you.
Will it work because it's given
Completely up to you.
because it thinks that
It's fine. And then you can, and then you go here and do the get elements. So you need to
Get element
tell it
ID,
where to
yeah.
put it.
Why should I do this? No.
So when it's number, you have to put it not.
So do we
You
still
have to
need
put
to
it
do
like
get element by ID?
Yeah. Because you need to tell them where to put this.
And that will be inside.
you do it only for
Yeah, it's the
screen.
second. So the first parameter.
Then you do this.
Yeah,
Or you
exactly.
do it only for screen.
Surplus,
Yeah.
and then
But
second one.
object, non-self function, everything you
So this what I did now is static.
Yeah,
I can put by
use the
myself.
document.
If I have 100,
now.
so where to declare that the object. So I can get from the first name, last name, and age. So I have.
You can create an object, yeah.
That's what we do.
Just,
So this is the function, the render function. It has two parameters. Right. The first one is your hello world. The second one is the yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you see, so I have
So
function.
now if you run this,
yeah. Actually,
you save it and
you
you
don't
run
have
it.
it do it.
Hmm?
Because
npm start.
either you do it like this, or you do it, or it's data that
So,
you get.
so it's
from
almost the same as we
the
did. It's
But you can also do
but
this
we
one.
create two components.
So you just
Like
make
main
an
one
object,
component is like the list,
take
another
an object,
identifier, and another component the polymeter is one
and
item.
then use it here.
You know what I
So
mean?
if you,
Username.
So you can see, for example, in my example, we have below, we have user list,
Oh no, I'm 95. Sorry.
it returns
I'm
the
but
file,
it's not good idea.
and then array
So
the
Yeah,
bill
Make
list.
sure you
And I have written the file, but
Yeah.
it's the same.
Yeah.
But instead of
Yeah,
keeping
yeah,
a
yeah.
string, you can see, for example, like user list, it takes a user as the ref.
Yeah.
It will be an object.
You can
It will be an array of objects.
Yeah.
So if every user, so instead of having units, it will be object, name, units. Object, name.
see now it knows.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, but-
So here we will not name it users, but we will name it like you will not name it users. So I think you can start with like and also like one thing is that
Yeah. So after it's
Oh
you
my
can,
God.
for example, do this. You can destructure two I think.
How can they modify this? Yeah, that's something.
does it work for you? What's the what does it say?
Yeah, the issue is that you are still not rendering anything, so you are not giving anything to my name. But you don't need to do that. What you really need is that
Let's go get some.
You're doing a lot of stuff and you're not.
Yeah. I just started
Just try to
simple.
make, just try to do this, what you did. Just display
Just to see whether it's working.
yeah, and
And
it's
then
first
once
name.
it works, then you can start to expand and modify.
Because now you have one component.
So now you have a
that
component that's called my
some
name
props that you
that
don't
accepts
have.
first and last name.
So,
So the way you should render here by giving it first name and last name.
after the
Two separate properties. Like you give it an ID, space, and you give it
too much at once.
It's two different things.
And
So you
for
give it,
example, by trying to
First name equals a
in
name.
line 6
Space,
and
last
you
name
don't
equal
have given response to find anywhere.
This is the way you should do it.
Yeah. So
And you
say
put it
name
inside my
is
room.
given.
This is separate program.
Yes. And even if you say props, it's not gonna work because you're not passing.
After you can get grab lunch now.
Yeah, you're not passing
Yes.
any properties.
Okay.
So
We will be back at
it's a bit
20.
too much at once.
We will be back at 25.
Yeah.
Just give me some water.
So what's our scope?
What is the assignment? What is the assignment? Because I just display hello user.
This is the way, no?
Yeah. So you have your hello user XM React render. Okay. Oh, I'm not even on this now. If you look at it, I just display hello
Okay,
user.
so I just
So I'm just going to start that now.
And then NPM start.
Yeah, NPM starts. So this is just the skeletal thing. So then I'll start to add stuff into it. What is the assignment? Do you know? What is it?
Wait a second.
No, what we're doing here right now.
We are not doing anything today.
Just to render first name and last name. So
And then
it allows
the
them
arrays.
in list of arrays. Okay. I've not done that. Just
And
try to
then
make it
NPM
up.
start right here. This is my thing now. Oh, this is here. So we have
So now we start project.
for React.
Yeah.
This is correct for design. I made one project to put on GitHub in Angular framework, and they have some issue. So with the Angular, and now it's like it's in other folder. Like still it is started like Angular.
Where did you learn you learn it itself?
But you create another folder, right? But it is taken from what did you say?
Oh shit.
We eat first. Debug. What did you say? Just two things. See, like there, I got this on the surface. Yes, and then I'm going to find what is that.
Oh, no, it works.
What are we supposed to do?
I just started with one thing only. We have to. We just need to display some data about some name and age or something.
It's the same thing, check everything is same.
Yeah. No, I've not done it.
Now show it's working.
It's just to be sure that it's working.
Yeah, it's showing working, but then it's signal it's React starting with development server. Development server is fake.
But like my
Yeah, it's the same thing that I've done and you've done. You just have one.
If we put the string,
Where's your UI?
give it React, you have to look at and it's like
If you do explain like that,
big object. And you look at it.
maybe understand. Because I like something within UI.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just write simple component. So yeah.
You should say it's not an object, it's not.
It don't have
It's
wait.
working now.
Yeah, look. Let server yeah, this is an Angular side. Yeah.
What happened? Is it do you have an Angular folder? So it's conflicting.
If it is one. But it converts first name, colon, something
Yeah.
like that.
First we need to do something. I have something for you guys, so how can I use? It's in my car.
Oh, okay.
It's yeah, for 4 of you, so I just don't want to mix with all of them. That's why I just didn't like bring it up.
I may leave early today around 3:30 or 4:30. So what you got? Suspense.
Yeah, that's no, it's not very special, but that's the thing I could get it from my hometown. It's just
Whatever
a
it
kind
is.
of
You remember us, you brought something.
yeah. So that like I cannot like I just did not bring it up because there were a lot of people. So yeah, and I have something for Rahim as well. So I'll just give it to him. And rest maybe we can go down and just bring it up
Yeah.
for all of.
Justina, can you also send me?
I can't see it. It's not, I can't see it. It's reflecting light though. You know what? Come on, do it on
Okay,
this
you
computer.
just wait and I will bring it up here before all the people come.
I'll be careful.
Wait, come and do it from this laptop.
If you're getting it, I'm not getting it.
It's true. I'm only saying myself.
It's not gonna I'm cheating a lot of things.
See, do it on his laptop. Emma, on his laptop.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Okay, so what I don't know. I'm just returning just hello user.
Shall we go for lunch?
I had breakfast. Yeah, I have lunch because I had breakfast before coming. My tummy is big. Thank you. I'll probably take banana.
Where are the?
Oh, no, they are. They'll probably back here.
Justina.
You really tried. Are you kidding me? What
These
is
are
this?
all for.
What is
These
this?
are.
Wow. Wow, you have to get all this. Oh.
These are for you guys.
Oh my God,
You
this
can
is
do anything.
nice. Oh,
Let me
this
ask.
is nice. Thank you. Oh. Oh, wow. How did you find all this? Oh.
Yeah, I have something for you. Yeah.
Awesome. Nice. Oh, thank you, thank you. This is that is really nice of you.
So-
really nice of you. So just choose anyone.
Okay.
Just choose anyone. Just get all of them here. So come and choose for them. Oh, sorry, is it? They're all.
Yeah, they are
What is
almost
this
same.
called? What is
This is
called?
this is yeah, you know, these are the handmade shawls. We call them shawl in our
Okay.
country.
Wow. Nice. Really, really nice. You spend lots of money on it?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Oh, this is really nice.
Tell me which ones.
That's okay. They're okay. They're all the same.
Yeah, almost. These two are all like similar, 100% similar. They don't have these things. They won't. So
Okay. I'll just.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you-
Okay, they have that. This and this they have that. Yeah.
yeah, everything.
It's just not decide which one I want. Oh, that is beautiful color. Nice. Good. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. That was the only special thing that I could get because this
Yeah,
was,
it's nice.
Really
It's really nice. Really, really nice. It's really, really nice. Just a lot of it. Oh wow. That is nice. Really? Wow, that just suits you. Or do you want this one? Just choose whichever one. That's okay. I'm not
I'm
forced.
very confused.
I'm not forced. Just match it against you. Just try it.
Tell me which one is.
Just choose whichever one.
that one.
Yeah, that's it.
It's like my this is my choice. I like my wife always use this type of color, so I just
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
like my mother shows all of them, you know. She just bought
Oh,
it.
that's so nice. That's so nice.
Actually, I went to Shimla.
Yeah.
Last
I'll
week.
let the others come and choose.
That one was right. There is some issue with flights, and you know that there is flood or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It was my so-called honeymoon over there. And,
Oh.
This is the one with straw. Yeah, that's another close color. You don't know, you're confused now.
Oh.
And these are the you know
But this is the
Pakistani
same
our
one.
traditional clothes. I bought it from Raheem.
Yeah, I
Oh,
know.
Yeah.
nice. That's nice. They are, this one is the same as this one that you have. This one are the same.
They have the different.
They
Yeah,
have that one.
yeah, that's the only difference.
Decide which one that you want. Because I brought it out so that you can see on the side. I'm not forced at all. Whatever is left, I'll take.
Sorry, yeah. I'm hoping for all.
I will just send
Nice.
them to you.
I remember when I was little, we used to put this in the uniform. This will be so nice.
Yeah. They will have the this one.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't. Just decide which one.
Should I do?
Is it not scarf? Is it?
It's like a scarf.
It's not a scarf, yeah.
history.
This color suits you.
Yeah.
Why does it
make-
have this edges?
Yeah, I will make this one.
Okay, you have the machine.
No, I don't have it, but when I went to.
You choose from.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's very nice.
Yeah. For also for the four of us. So choose which one are you like? You like white?
I
These are
already
the same.
have these colors, so that's why.
Okay, that's
But
good.
that white and this one don't have.
They don't have this.
White also doesn't have.
No.
No.
But we can make it. I don't have any.
Do you want this one inside here or do you want to put it back?
I put it in a bag.
That's very nice.
Yeah. I told him to bring something.
I thought it was sweet. This is the sweet. Thank you.
December never done.
Yeah, I know that.
I'll bring sweets.
How did you carry this? Because things can be heavy. You know, you're not big. I didn't expect it to. That was really nice. Nice cup. From Islamabad. I guess, I don't know, I'm just asking, is that where you went? I don't know.
Is it scarf or shawl, right?
It's short, just like the what you got.
Shawl.
Yeah. A shawl or if you can,
Yeah.
in during winter,
Scarf
it will be
also.
good. Yeah, during winter it will be really, keep you warm.
Oh, very nice, yeah.
That was
I
nice.
never expect that he.
No.
I thought you'd just bring sweets or
Sweets,
something.
yeah.
Paul was going to bring us sweet, and they brought us something better than sweet. That was nice. Ah.
I'm going to smoke a cigarette.
Okay. Yeah, it keeps closing. So. Takes a while to get one's head and wrap around. My thought is, you want to do hello what?
Yeah.
And you have to write this much code to print that.
Understand.
But I now kind of understand that you can reuse the components again, you know, so that you don't have to repeat that hello word so many times. So that's kind of makes sense from there.
I know it looks complicated.
Maybe by the time we get our head around it, we'll see.
Always make it easier.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Time to take a break.
Yeah.
Understand?
Yeah, it's taking a while to understand it. So much steps.
Don't worry about that, take it easy. I was like this when I started, so we will learn.
So you finished here, then you got the job?
Yeah.
With the, wow. That's,
So many others too.
Yeah. Follow through the course.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good.
But the first one should be so you have to do this because you have to render the component first and then write props inside the component.
What do you mean?
So make it backslash and then this one and this one. Close it, and then and then go inside it. And then write your props. So so first
it has to be inside.
yeah. So first name equals your value.
The first name thing, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to do? We have to create another class for the name?
No, just I think I don't know. But I think he said that you have to render your name, your last name, your first name, and your age. So
In the class, like the one at the bottom here.
Yes,
And
so-
then we call it the other one.
yeah, you don't have to use the same method. They want you to use other method. You can just do it like this, or you can do it.
I'm trying to, because I create one here. I've not put the name in. So I just said const name equals to list of drop. And I said welcome to React. The name, probably the first name and the second name. But I need to find a way to pass that name. So that
So your name should be inside this.
it should be inside there.
Yeah, so you just write name with quotes, and then you can make an update like you said, and then say the first name and last name.
Okay, so I said equals to interest.
No, yeah.
But it's going to be in objects.
No, so no, it should be an error if you want to just write your name. If you want, so first name equals just should be update.
Objects, yeah. So I need to do equals to objects. Yeah. And then put my name here. Do I need to put that name equals to that?
So you can just write first name inside and then equal to first name and last name equal to last name, and then we can do yeah. No, it should be inside equal to.
You put it inside?
Yeah, it's okay.
Thank you.
So that should be
Oh, not. If I make it object, should it not be like a form of object like this or the array that because it is easy.
yeah, he didn't array. You want to make the same or
Yeah, I want to try the object.
so the object is correct.
It's correct.
So it should be inside the code.
Yeah. And then I can put comma and then do this second name. Last name. And then I can put comma second. So what do you do here?
So go object.
Oh, space.
It should be inside. This one it says here you use the object on so it should be another.
React. We have to react on React, huh?
Yeah. You have to definitely react on this.
You want
I only
React.
have one.
Create
What we need to do is
So now I want to call it here.
so you have an object, so you just use that.
So I just use the object name and that's it.
Now
So name dot
so what do you want to run with?
I want to render both my first name and my last name.
So how do you get the value from an object?
Dot name. Well, I'm doing it constantly because
Yes, so name is this whole object.
yes.
So you want to get the first
Name dot name.
no, so you want to get the first name.
Dot first name. Name dot first.
Yeah, so in your case it's just the name of first.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
So if I want to get the second one, I will just attach name dot second name as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, name and last.
This code.
So I just put a space and I do name your last.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the way that works.
Just make it comma.
Yeah. You ready?
Yeah.
So, I don't know whether that works.
You need to
Try to look at the code or not.
Okay, then I can start.
No, it's already started. Just go inside your.
Actually, there is it's coming back. I'm
Missing one.
sign because I want to upload the coding.
Just the icon.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it's like now it comes, but when I did like half an hour ago, it's like it's showing some errors or something. Then your SEO,
So maybe you can come around. Did you start with the project? So it's successful. Go to the follow
Hello user.
So the icon appears just automatically when the Google does it. So Google disappear after some minutes. But the issue that you had is the code is not that you have another project and this project that will affect your code. It doesn't matter. When you got the issue, can you just follow it? Okay.
I'm missing something here. It's not displaying my first name. So it's displaying my last name. So I think there's something.
Oh yeah, so you have to
So what it is,
just try it out. Just try it out.
Yeah.
So if the code doesn't work, and you have another idea, just try your idea. Yeah, yeah. So when you do changes, it will run at the change.
So now it's gone. Now it's gone.
No. Yeah, hello first name and no. Why not?
Now it's working.
Save it.
And now it's showing
And also
this
the
one. But what is like
React app.
It's taking it as an Angular.
and
Maybe you can change it to the
Maybe you should do
default setting
environment.
with something.
There must be a way to do Angular environment, then you have a JavaScript environment.
Yeah, but did you do it like this?
Why you put an
Like I just have, can you do it with the, for example, we have user array of different objects.
Yeah, and yeah, I just have objects. Just
I have first name, last name, age.
and last
Two
name.
different spots.
Yeah,
And
just
I'm
one
using
small
the age on
object
first
and
name,
I'm
last name, last name,
see.
age, and I'm using the first name, line,
You know, one of
first name, age.
Just one object.
but you can do it only for one. You cannot do two data. Remember it is on top. Put my name.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Your name. Then you have to do dynamic.
You change it
This is
the other way.
No, why I'm doing it, I will say put one comma and put your data. I just put a comma and put another data. That's the reason I put the name.
Yeah, but then you have to
So what I do
do some probably a function.
This is the structure, this is the structure.
Where you want to take
Yeah,
every,
but what if we,
But
each
here
data
how
in
did
your array.
Oh, then you
UNS
use the
and
name
UNS
dots.
2, how did he do that?
he did that because he used
That
math.
is this the props.
your name.
Uses
That's
that
what I
math.
remember.
So which means that he's mapping through the array.
Okay.
And for each element in the array, he's creating
Because here I'm supposed
Ella,
to be
you
this.
should-
It should be.
So
This
if I
one is the first one.
And I plug my.
This name, right?
Yeah.
And then welcome to the first name,
Yeah.
name of the world.
Oh, I think this of course is
So what now if I have just like myself?
What if we have different
So
properties?
this is from
If
me.
you have different properties.
What about
I mean, you
some
refer
else
to
and
one
or
of
other?
the yeah,
So
maybe.
This
in
is
that
name.
case, you
Yeah.
have to make
If I change it, let me
object.
see. I'll change it because it's going to be like, I'll change
You
it.
need an array outside the project or inside the boundary here. Inside here. And for objects.
Okay.
And then you give them a So it depends on what you want to do. What you want to do in this case.
Sounds good different.
So you want to have a name, last name, and actual two persons.
Yeah.
So you have to make an array of objects.
That means reference to
Because he's giving an error here, I don't know what.
But remember, these props, you will not do everything in this props. So if you have data, you get the data and use the classify the props, and then you plug it inside the component and use it. If you want to write type like 10 names, and it will not change. So you want to have 10 person's name, last name, and age, and it will not change. So you just create it inside the component and not write it across. So you just write it as a object and you just do the math. Did you get it? So you don't always write your data, but it doesn't change. You don't always do it inside the object.
can we create an array of variable here? Here,
But
array of one array here. Can we create an array like that?
yeah, you can create an array. For first name, you want to create an array of name,
Yeah,
last name.
like which name? It's not printing actually. This hello user, I create a user one,
No.
and the user one actually I'm making it an array.
Okay, so
Array of users.
yeah, so this
So I have entered only one object, having a first name and last name.
yeah, so you imported the data wrong. So you have to just like it as so you have to inside this dot props you have to first import the user and then you can call and then open brackets and then
Where user.
sorry. So
Okay.
in here
Yeah.
you take this one.
User.
No, you have to
User what?
you have to go inside this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the user one and then column
Okay.
and then open brackets.
that name is the name that we call it. We get
Bracket?
by ID.
Yeah.
This one.
This one has
Curly bracket.
this one
No.
is here.
And which one is it?
Yeah, good. No.
Yeah.
So yeah, that, because I changed it from give it different
No,
it failed.
the last.
Okay.
It has to be this.
So you
Same,
said
yeah.
that is an object. So we
Term.
import the objects, last name and first name, object property. Last name and first name inside the user one project object. So you can do that. So try to see this. Okay.
Well, okay.
Should come forward.
Welcome. Here also I have to write user what?
No, because you imported to last name first name. Oh yeah.
Yes. Where can I write here? User.
Because you have to move this column on this one because it's not the array, it's an object you created. So let's do this, and then I'll read the second one. because
You get it running?
I'm not
But
sure.
this is your object, right?
Yeah, this is object. So
But it is, I have written here, but I want to create one more user too. So every time I have to change the class.
now for user two, so
Yeah.
you have to create another you can create another about it actually.
I want to create
Okay,
an array,
what are you trying to do?
here.
If you have to put the same.
Not inside.
Yeah, so you can do it. But
Because if I'm writing user one here, why I'm writing here? Because if I want to create user two again, I have to write user two. Then it's like I am creating so many, so I have to write so many. So that's
Like for example, if I send it here,
What does it say?
so I want to use this data.
yeah.
yeah,
So
I know.
where should I do that? What should I do?
Go to the
Where should I put it?
Yeah, so you have to do the same that you did. So with the brackets, and then you have to
Yeah, because you commented out.
just
Line six.
copy this
Ah, you
object and
commented
then pass
this
it again,
out.
and then
Oh
you have to do this. So try to do put this brackets and then pass another object with the name,
Yeah.
first name and last name.
Like
Yeah, but you're returning
Yeah,
a list
yes.
item. Try to return
No.
H1 or something.
No, just put the braces that you did before, and then you have to just copy
Yeah,
this
there's no
object.
one on the list.
Because
You're returning
this object is
like
like a person, so it's a person's first name and last
I mean,
name.
it would make
Yeah.
How
sense
about
if you
if I
have to
write
now.
here like class 9? So class here 9, okay. And I want to put all the students' name in one array.
Okay, so you have to do
So I
bracket.
will create a array here, bracket here, right?
Yeah.
Array here. Then I can write everyone's name here.
Yeah, so
So what I have to write here then?
you have to write the names first. You have
Here, here I need
to here. So
Here, right?
you want to
Okay.
have all the teams names.
So first.
Call it names first name and last name.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
How it's going?
Not
What is your
good.
last name?
Sorry. First thing is that if I have an
So-
array of objects, can we do
So
this?
here, do
Yeah,
I
but the
need
first
to
thing you are missing like
modify
So
you
you
need to
use
close in
it
this
as
string
is
pole.
here.
This is I have changed. It's class 9.
Yeah, remove this one.
Okay?
Yeah. No, just
And const users, yeah. The
you change it to plugin, so it should be plugin.
Yeah.
if you see my code here,
Okay.
you do some stuff, you get some stuff. What do you return?
This also.
You return the URL and the li and the HTML.
Okay.
So you don't put the constant stuff inside the return because you don't want to return
So
these.
you
These are like above the method.
like him.
You can see I'm putting them here.
You do a
Ah,
And in the return, I return
math
the
and
HTML.
then
okay.
you get the first name and last name, and then you just show it.
Okay.
So that's it.
Right here, the mapping thing.
You can do it as you can write a variable and assign it another, or you can do something you can say different genre. Yeah.
Yeah,
I could do that.
yeah, take this class 9, that math.
Okay. But I
What are you-
created here.
what are you trying to do now?
Whether it will take class 9?
That map, we are mapping to that array.
Yeah.
And each, so now make a parentheses and then parameter user. And what user take needs? What do you
Which
think?
users?
This user,
Yeah,
like
nice to
this.
see you passing two
First
different
name is
parameters now.
first name and
The
last
last
name.
one,
Yeah.
okay.
So I have to create
So this is where the
Yeah.
this object
Yeah,
construction is
yeah.
because now you can get first name and last name all in the same line.
What do you want to return?
You don't have to
First name and
separate
last
the
name. So
declarations.
I can put this one. Yeah.
Now what you can try is make another class that will grab the my name class. You could another class that will have UL and then inside of that UL, it
First name is not
return
defined.
your business items.
One more.
Now you're returning a
What?
list
I
item.
looked in the console.
That doesn't really
Yeah.
make sense
You
because
can
don't have any
your
UL.
return
Right,
should
initially
have
when you
a
have
fragment
UL, and
type.
inside UL you have LIs. And then you only
And
have
then you
LIs,
should
you
wrap
don't have
those
UL.
You should wrap this
Okay.
inside
So try to
the
hit it where you
code
have
devices, and then you have to put it inside the div before it goes.
Only business, right?
like user
Yeah.
list or something.
All of it,
Name list,
yeah,
yeah.
not just fragment. So remove this code devices.
Okay.
Put all of this code inside the div tag. Every
Right, so
what
then
when you
implementation
return
will be a bit
Yeah.
different.
this return always have a
You're not gonna
parent tag.
pass
So
in your
all
React
this
DOM,
code
you're not
inside
gonna call
the
it
div
my name.
should have a tag
You're not gonna
either
call my name
fragment
anymore.
or div.
In React DOM, or
Okay.
render.
Deep
You're
dive.
gonna call
How to do that?
The
the
div.
what's
You
the
have
name?
to wrap it in the, and inside the
No,
div you
not
put the
yeah,
tag.
so you have to go.
And you're gonna pass an array
div
into
tag.
it. So I can show you, for example, if I'm gonna type to like how it should, how the React DOM would look, and then it's up to you to see if you can make it work.
And then
You make an array.
all this code, your function, because it's JavaScript, so you put all the JavaScript inside the code bases.
Yeah.
React knows that
It's not a string.
this is JavaScript.
Yes, very good.
None, and then one of them.
How you make the reverses?
Manual.
Yeah, so you need.
I'm gonna get
Alright,
it.
guys, thanks. Right, yeah, no. So
So you have an array.
So
You
that
just
that
take some semicolon.
no, it's not
One
that.
more.
Is this broken or?
No, it's not.
Alright, we'll just do
I
it.
need to write it down.
Yeah, so you
It's fine,
you
then
can
you
You
do
don't
I
have to write with them.
I have to put one curly bracket.
Yeah, but if it is like this,
if you just
Yeah.
do it so you can
it's an array.
So what you're gonna do is you're gonna call
It's-
your new function, your new class. which is
Last name and first name is not defined.
Last name is
Right.
like last time I should start pressing like lowercase.
Yeah, and you make it uppercase.
We're gonna pass,
Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna,
Okay.
name array, for example. Alright, and array equals.
And your
Last
issue.
name is no difference.
So what did you
Oh,
do?
yes.
So what did you do? So you have an object, use it.
to a class, you can do it like
No, it's not that one.
No?
No, use it. So you map users.
space
The
and
user now. What's the user now?
so now you know that the name
When you
is.
map to the user, this creates a new
Yeah,
array.
User is one
Yeah,
object.
but just like in a rendering data, it's when it's done.
So now you know you can call a name list and you pass
So
it
now
only
you
one
just
prop
doing
name
the data.
array.
So it's an array, and you map all of it. So
you
when
pass
you
it.
this one,
So now what you have to do
so
is
this one is
your
your
name
object.
list, you have to loop through
So
the
which,
foods.
how do you
But
get
remember,
the
User,
prop
user
dot
that
make
first
array.
name. You can
Yeah.
start entering into the object.
Because
Yeah.
you are passing
Yeah,
through what you
user
call
is
it.
one object.
Yeah, but you don't
Here,
understand
you're gonna
if
use the
you console log user, but
You
you
can
get.
try, if you ever wonder, you
You
can
get
always
an
on the
object
render,
Yeah.
you
with two
can always
properties,
console
first
log
name and
user.
last name. So if you want to get the first name, what you should do?
And then you see what you
Ah,
get.
user dot
And you're
first
this,
name.
right, if
Okay,
you
so
do
I
it
have to
here,
write here user dot first.
No, here.
Oh, yeah.
because in this
I would do
object,
console log, this is what I know often.
and because this one
Because
gets
later
one
on-
object, so we should be using
And, one thing-
Yeah.
confusing.
Can we write this the other way?
So
That we,
it's
Just a second. Yes.
just gonna log.
like this is what you used before the. How about the second method that we used before? So we should write this dot prop.
For each
If you change.
This the props that users you mean or what?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that. Or you can just get users from this dot props.
An array of two objects.
Otherwise,
here.
we have to just declare a variable and we put this dot.
Yeah, exactly. This is what was used, like the old way.
Yeah.
But instead of returning li here, it's better to create a new component and render it there, like me.
Oh, yeah, yes.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, but you are on the good track. The only thing here that I don't like is like we should not use like an array of strings. Use an array of objects.
I want this to be
So
out.
the first one here should not be a string. It should be an object that has a name called mark.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was doing, but I stuck and then I changed.
Okay, so I give you a better idea is to
So I created the example.
create the
Yeah,
object,
but
create an array of
I'm
object
asking,
here.
I'm
Yeah, just
explaining.
enough.
Create an
I have
object
a
here, like,
very-
and
very
after that,
obvious
just
class
say
now
here for no, like,
with an array of 2 objects.
Right.
How
So
to
then
put, how to get infos, and then I'm
Just
saying
say here,
class
like-
I'm mapping it where to put here. So
and create the here array of objects.
So for that you have let me try to
You cannot write like this because what is variable? What variable is this? Right here. Hello user plus name, right?
what so you can do it, but it's not a good practice to do. So you remove this
Yeah, but what
here.
the value of user?
Now it's
Yeah.
what is the all when you want to have a problem with array object
inside the random.
Yeah.
So now,
for this you need another component.
Yeah.
This actually always be inside the index when you so run this component run this inside another component.
like he did.
I don't want to make it look very bad. Don't worry about it right now.
Control Z, control Z.
You'll find out later.
Control Z. How many did you add to him?
Let's try and go back to the
Don't worry about
Oh,
it.
I think I know.
When you move into 2, 3, and 4 components at a time, you will get that video.
Okay.
Like what you did.
elements. List elements. Okay. And then, but that is not what you assume. You return, what does this mean?
Did you save that one?
What are we returning?
Objects are not valid.
Exactly, you're returning an object. But we don't want to return an object. We like to return
What one? Oh?
either. Exactly. So what should we do instead?
Yeah, but then we have to do something here.
Because
You don't need to mention, just use the name and date.
I asked like, what if you
Yeah,
get
but
this
how,
object
like when
instead
we
of-
run this one, it doesn't show anything.
It doesn't show because here you are saying user. So now user is an object. You say user.name, user.age inside user here. Yeah. So you can have two, user.name and next to it another one, user.age.
Okay.
You get the idea?
Yeah.
I create an array of
Name.
this one. Array of users. Put this plus here. And then we get confused.
And what's confusing here? Yeah. So you're taking objects of array.
This is kind of hard to do everything in one line. So let's fix that.
Then you
So
have to
first
do
of
another
all,
command.
when you have
But
that
not-
render, not
It's simple.
you can make it here, but
How
just
can
kind
you
of
get
break it
props?
so that it's easier to.
Yeah.
Because now it's for me, it's also if you have some mistake in this.
Just put spaces or dashes in between them or put them in different P's or it's HTML.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
I
you
was
can
just-
style them.
Yeah. I was just.
Trying to show.
Yeah.
So
This is the construction. This is the
now
construction.
you know, okay, you have one
Okay.
file.
Yes.
Okay. Then just before this, you just put that on
we
line
can
as well.
string
Yeah.
variables. We
And
will
that
have
is
to do that.
confusing because it's going up. Because if you want to do something, then you do here, and then what you do here, yeah.
Now you can remove the equal, but the spacing in the equal. You can do
Yes.
that.
And we will
Well, it's up to you.
write like JavaScript inside the string.
So then I will do also right here. So now you have your array, and I will
And
so
it's
you have
coming
your array.
too much heat from this TV.
And we
Uh,
will
what
write
should
it
I feel like I'm getting some
This is why I'm here.
Why did you put
And we also have to hack this somehow.
So now,
Because
and now you
if I
can
put
also
like this,
just where you end.
it's not accepting, and if I put like
Ah.
this, it's a string.
Yeah.
So this is where you finish.
Okay.
Wow.
And if you put on
This is not right. So it's the other one.
No.
You see?
Yeah,
It's
where you
strings.
finish and then you have.
And if I put
So now it's a bit easier to read, right?
like this,
You
it's
have
not.
now.
It's always a bit tricky.
Right now,
Number, how do you know that
only
it's
two
number?
JSONs.
How can you say that it is
And then we can even
acceptable?
go a bit further and say
Wait a minute.
like this.
How to console log
Oh,
here
it's a bit crazy.
the
Now
type
you know,
of.
okay, pressing
page.
the array, you have two.
I want to see the type of page. It's number,
So
string, or
what's the
something.
error?
How can I?
Then you log it out up here.
Yeah. So
Yes.
So then you can put the first one on 5.
EIP is
Type of is not a function.
Also, we are doing the first one.
It's like type of space.
And then writing.
Yes. I don't think it's big O. I think it's
So you
just
call
type
it class hello user. And try to access name from the props.
why is it no?
And you're passing a list of users. Okay, so you have a problem.
Yes.
The property
No, no, no.
trying to
Ah.
access in
Are you
hello
running
user.
it?
I was
Not the
running
one
it.
you
There.
It went
What
off
I'm
by
trying
itself.
to do is
Try
Sometimes
logging
it's
into
closing
property.
the terminal by itself.
Go
I
to
don't
the
know why.
hello user
Can you
class.
just go down
So,
check something?
that's weird.
You see, would you like to
But-
run
but-
the app another port instead?
Ah, but it's still
From
running.
your render function, you can do anything.
So where is
Actually,
your-
goes plus
This is
the log.
this is
Yeah.
not an
No,
array.
Yeah.
no, you got it here.
So
Inside the
Some
inside
numbers.
the
But
press.
I think you're
Try to
running
log the
it.
process.
Yeah. Oh.
It's running.
Yeah.
And see
So I would just delete
Yes,
it.
it's,
and
it's
see
what you want
exactly
to
what
put it
you're
in
an
getting.
in an area. I should change
So
this one.
because
Yeah.
when I was
Yeah,
saying
just put,
why it's curly braces, I said
opening.
because
Ah,
you
brace,
know,
yeah.
if you want,
Should I
if
pick
you
that
it's
up?
like
no, no, just keep it.
Ah, yeah, this one.
yeah, and if
Yeah.
it's
So-
like
So I will give you a hint.
it's not.
So what you should do
and
is
if it's like
just
this.
It's a string.
copy
This
this.
is string.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So whatever we do here,
You gotta
if
use
you
the
want to
again,
console log
okay,
something,
it's variables.
works,
Yeah.
we have to do it here.
And here,
Yes.
Where
Where you're
I'm gonna say
rendering.
So this is kind of
more,
constructed.
okay.
users.
No. So see what you get?
New class.
You get a list of users.
No,
There
not
is no
really.
construction
It's
anymore.
literally just a
Check that
function.
property that doesn't
You do
exist.
this.
Yeah.
Like
okay.
it has a render
Not just
method,
put it around
and
there.
then inside of that
Oh,
render
you're
method,
saying-
you
So,
call
yeah,
list of
it's
props
nice to put that
and
on
get
the-
out
Open it and close it.
these
Yeah.
props here.
That's the first thing you have to fix.
But it has nothing to do with the constructor.
And
So now
we want to do
this is still
Just
sort of
function,
one
right?
object.
Object, yeah.
So if you reduce this,
Like what
you
JavaScript
don't want to
does
call a hello
is
user because
it takes
hello user is just
these
one small component.
properties,
It's
which
This
is
is
like
there here.
hello user is just
exactly
gonna
it
be
takes the
rendered.
properties,
See,
store
yeah,
them
you
in
gotta
an
render
object
it each
that it
time
calls
looks
props.
user that
You
map.
get
And
this?
then
Yeah.
now it's in the
every
way of two objects.
You want to
class
call like the user
that
list
extends
Yeah.
instead
React
of hello
component,
you can change it
Okay.
to user list.
that class
But
has
that's-
list of
that's,
props available to it.
When I was watching some tutorials,
Yes,
it was
so
props
first-
and this render.
So now you should have
So
like
you render, you're returning the class,
Oh
right?
no.
That's when you do
State?
a stateless function. That's different.
Just look at your
And
render.
There
with
you
another
can
fixed
define
name,
it as
another
function,
name.
not as
Okay,
a
that
class.
was-
Each object has first
That's a
and
bit
last.
different, but
Yeah.
no need to go
Yeah,
into
exactly,
that
right?
right now.
You're returning hello
When we
user.
do the
Ah,
classes,
So now the other one is
we
empty.
access
The other one is empty.
these properties
This
by
is
doing
you
this
wanna- you
stuff.
So, yeah,
wanna-
okay.
you
And
wanna-
that's React that's kind of doing that
Yeah,
for
I
us.
do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for example, here I write by myself name, last name,
Hey,
and age.
so
Yes.
What if
now,
I have to meet
no,
you and construct?
wait, wait,
And then I want to render for each of us.
No problem. So
Yes.
now,
For example, we
Where should I
create
put the
this
array
remote,
of objects?
this statement from here,
Then
and
you
you
put
can just
it
array
Yeah.
and
So we don't need to
array.
put the braces,
Oh, outside?
curly braces inside.
Oh no, because this is just JavaScript. You only put the curly braces when you are writing URL and li and
Yes.
stuff
Yeah.
inside it.
Inside it.
And then from
then
here,
you just
like,
copy this.
we only need this index.
Index, yeah, we only need
No,
the index.
all-
What about all these
No.
CSS? We should know.
Yeah, we are not doing any CSS or anything. And just inside the source, keep only index.js inside the
And
source.
then comma.
Only inside the source.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
remove
And-
the
and
stuff
you
outside of the
answer-
source.
Yeah, and one more thing.
Yes.
Like what you said to
And then
create
the
another
rest
component like you created.
Yeah.
For which
Exactly.
shall I create?
Now you just
for
write
this portion or
element.
what?
Yeah, like this li should goes into a separate component.
Or we just need a variable here of that component.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
create a new class and you just get it.
Yeah.
User, which is this first thing. Okay, and then if you go,
And now what do we need to do? We need to
there's a
put in array here.
Oh,
No, 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 no. Just as a variable.
Now you get
Okay.
the
So I
key.
can also put
Shall I
this one.
remove this git ignore as well?
Because
What?
every
This
time
one.
you try and-
Oh no, this is outside of the folder.
I think it's
This is outside of the
Yeah.
source. So don't touch anything.
So it's literally just
That's for React.
an array. Do you remember when like I asked
Yeah, that
Jonas like what does React.render ISO take?
Yeah.
It can take either one element or it can take an array of elements. And that's what we're doing here.
And React doesn't know what update because
We're just making it as an array.
Yeah, but now I have to write like for each one. the name.
Yeah, but then
But
if
if I have the names, I'm fetching the data. For
Yeah.
example, I'm fetching the astronauts.
Yes.
data.
then you would do instead. So then you would do users that map
Uh-huh.
in your
and like user
something you
this,
didn't talk about yet.
and then you would
adding the key.
Oh, yeah.
up.
Tell them or not yet?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
we can tell them.
Up to you.
And then user,
What you-
and then you would define
I
the
don't-
element there. So you would do
In
like
the
hello
map,
user.
how does it work?
Yeah.
I used to use Bluedash to map to everything, so I don't.
Yes, and then you would do
You have
first name
user, and then if you want to get the index, is it?
It's the second parameter.
Second parameter, okay.
equals,
So
and then
then
JavaScript,
your
But that should really not be used as an index because it's not stable.
and that's if we have
delete, for example, the third
Uh-huh,
version.
array
array
of
of objects.
Yeah, and user will
So
be.
the third
Yeah,
one is
yeah,
second.
Because then
So the
we'll
third one is index
transform
two, which is wrong.
this
Why
this
why
array
are
of
not
objects
why are not
into
using
an
keys
array
here? Because
of
we don't have a stable
elements.
identity.
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
elements.
Yeah.
So we need to put
And
an
then-
ID on the
and
user
then I just
so we can use
it's
that.
okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, you can-
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, and this
R is a bad name, but we would call it something
Now,
else.
for example,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's a good
This
idea.
one,
But
right?
yeah,
here
that's really
we
good.
have here we have div
Um,
like this one.
if
And this
you
is
do-
the main
yeah, this is also a
component, yeah?
ranking, so if you type
If you want to create this one, we can create
equals,
another file.
and then
Yeah.
again the,
And then we can
the-
make
the
here
semicolon,
hello
sorry, not the
Yes.
semicolon.
user.
Then you
Yeah.
import.
And then
Then if you
yeah,
type user
array
from-
is still
Users.
no not array but div.
You're gonna see
This.
It won't be exactly like that, but it'll be very close. Yeah,
Something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
like that.
I think we need to
So that
solve it or
And for
something.
example, we do
First-
Yeah,
header,
go.
we do a side, we do this and that, everything we render in the main
Yes,
component.
exactly. Yes.
You're gonna see that.
So I will remove this
Because
class
of the
in
error.
line here because
And
I
now
will
if you do the
create it outside. right?
I think this is nice.
Yeah, but here, if I want to create one
it
more
works because
class
you're basically
09,
saying that,
then again I
okay,
have to
this
modify
first
my class.
instance here,
Oh yeah, that's not good.
is
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
your
So
Then you would just have something called class.
Excuse me, can I have a look at the code that you have? Excuse me, can I have a look at the code?
I didn't put that AR over there, that's first.
Yes, exactly.
yeah, that's fine, that's fine. But now we
Yeah,
have to
but
know
that's
that this
because
first
you're not writing this in JavaScript right
has
now.
a key called
So
diameter.
remember how to write JavaScript
And
in
the
React?
second one has a key called header. So for example, if you give it the same key, you go back to the code and then instead of giving it like
Open an object.
it's basically like unique identifier, like a password in a way. So yeah, so then we have a
Really braces open.
Let me
Yes.
get
And then here the braces close.
yeah, so for example, try instead of this,
What
try
you want?
passing a string and then in string type go back to the key
Yes.
where you pass the key.
Press exit.
Instead of using
And
it
what
first,
is it saying?
try passing a string.
Yeah.
Or just put a string around it actually.
Does it have a battery?
What?
You know how to check if it is battery? If battery
Yeah,
works?
just put it on the left.
No, no, not like that.
Oh.
It's gonna be used at first.
But
Save it.
try go back,
And go back
save
to the
it.
browser.
And then
Oh, you mean checking the electricity? Yeah, okay.
No,
And
so
to the console.
Like
should bring me like this.
the infrared
Yeah,
thing.
but it's not.
Should be unique.
It's not.
One
Yeah.
in there and then. So
But
that
here
means
it's
that
working.
Yeah, it is.
Each time, so that we are trying
But
to
it's
make
weak.
you know that the first
The
one
back
is
60
different than the second one. Now you have the same key.
I think we
In some of them, you have the both of them.
let's try and solve the problems
We're
together.
gonna see it later.
We don't have an infinite amount of time.
We have to know the first part, the second part. We use the key to tell it.
So
Now since the key is the same, it is up to possible, which you don't want sometimes.
was it clear a bit or? Was it clear? Did you have any issues? Like, what's the main thing that you are struggling with?
Yeah, like why do we need two components?
Why do we need two components?
Still, I have no clue.
Because, as I said, like now we are really simple. So the component model doesn't really prove anything to us. But you would be building complex apps. So putting everything in one file will result in a lot of issues, like I described in the beginning. So this is why we are trying to initiate you on the component-like way. But now it's like, well, I don't need two components. It's like I can like cook everything in one plate. You know what I mean? I have small meal, but this course is not really for now. It's for like future-proof. So this is why you should really get into the component model, because it's like a practice that you will be using more than really now.
Let's say that you're passing a list item, right? Let's say that Jonas tells you, okay, this list item, I want you to color the first word always blue, and I want you to add a button on the end. In this case, you only have to change your list, the one that returns the list item, right? Because now you made two classes, right? One of them is the how do you call it, the user list, and the second one is the name. So now you only have to update the name, and the user list doesn't care what you did because it's still gonna get the name, and you only have to change the name. You're gonna see it later. The more you scale down, you don't care about other places. You just need to update one place, and everything else will get when you use the new thing.
Let's try and do it together again. Just as a fast example. So I will create normal class. The file is empty. I will create a class called or a component called list users, and it will extend from React dot component. Okay, it has a render, and we can render it by saying React DOM dot render. We give it our list of users, and we give it document get element by ID, and we can extract this as a variable, but we also can just not do that.
So we can, sorry for interrupting.
Of
We
course.
can have two roots. For example, root 1 and root 2.
You cannot have two.
No, in the HTML.
Oh yeah, you can have like as many things.
Yeah?
Yeah. You can have, for example, here
Yeah?
root 3.
Yeah?
But depends where you want to host your app, where you want to put your app. Do you want to put it here or here? What's the parent? Because everything has just one parent.
Do
You
we
cannot
need
have.
that in real life?
I don't think so. Well, for example, in my company, we have a React app, but it's like, oh, this side is a React app and this side is a different React app. So we render two apps in the same page. So maybe you need two different routes, but I would say like 95% of the times you don't need that. You are more than good with one. Make sense? So we have list of users now. Here I want to render const this dot props dot users, or just this dot props. I will get users. Make sense? I need a prop called user. We said it's an array of objects. So I will just, for the sake of like simplicity, I will just say const users equal an array, and I will put it here. Make sense? I'll create an object called name, Yunus, age 25. I just use my name again. 26.
Isn't 25?
24.
24.
Yeah. I will be 25 next month.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Thinking of party.
Yeah.
React party. React
Bring all your components and let's fight. So,
This is not an Angular component.
well, we can even fight better if it's an Angular component. If it's React, I would take it easy on you. If it's Angular, it's just like. So here we have like users. So we can say return. We will have UL. Okay, and in the UL I will have this. I will have users. Dot map. It takes an arrow function. Okay,
Yeah.
and this is a user object. I will return a different component here. I will call it user item. And I will give it name equal
User.name.
user.name and age equal user.age. Why?
Yeah.
Because here we have it's an array. So it's all this array. When we map, we take individual items. And each item is an object. And each object has what? A name and an age.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah. But
Cool. Yeah.
in this case, user item, what kind of element?
It's a component that we still didn't create.
Ah.
If you see like if you see div or something you are familiar with, okay, it's from the platform, it's from Chrome. But any other custom component that start with capital, you need to create. So we say class
User item.
extends React and the render. Good. This is the basic skeleton. And we say return. We give it an li, and we say here this dot props dot name, this dot props dot age. Is it clear?
So we have to do like this. First we do user item and then we create that.
Yeah.
component.
Or you can create them both. You can create this first and this second. I don't say
If you know before what you want to do.
exactly. If you know before, you just can start with this one. It's much better to start with this one because once you have this one, you can create this one that uses this one. But for example, when I create this one first, I cannot run the code because I need to create this one to run the code. So always start from the leaf.
So you can
from the
see-
basic.
You can console log problems.
Yeah, start from the basic. So this component should be first technically,
Yeah.
and after that this one.
Yeah.
And we have here. Yeah, we have here units 25, units 2, 26. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
All of you? We can make this better by just destructuring.
There is, like, I have one question, or we have a question over here, me and him. So we have a map where we return an element.
I don't get. Okay. So you have li, you have user.name. Yes. This is quite weird.
Maybe it's like some formatting somewhere.
Maybe the first thing that I will try is to remove this.
Can you maybe put it up how you debug it on the
Yeah.
Different.
Chromecast?
That's this.
Should I just cast?
If that's okay, Hima. To press that.
Is there any password?
So this was the
Try go
problem.
back.
Yeah, this was the problem. I just someone gave me this phone. It's not mine, so I need to live with it. Which is like in real life, you will really like get problems that you didn't create. Someone already left who created the problem. So the first thing I can see here that it's parsing error, and I can see that user is defined. But so the first thing I would just like remove this, and I would say Command X. I'll just put a 5 here. The code runs. So there is specifically an issue in that line. That line is causing the issue. So I scope the problem to this line specifically. I can go back again and do this.
So if we console log user there, we will get the object.
Yes.
Hopefully.
So now we have this li and we have this li, but still user. So if we delete this, it works. Make sense? So if we go to the browser, yeah, it should be an empty. It's right. So now let's get it to the original format. So now let's do yeah.
Users that first name. It's Control Shift Command Shift 8. Oh.
Command
Command shift.
Shift.
It's bench level.
Command Shift.
Command shift. Kabir this is 7 or 8.
8 should be 8 9. Yeah.
That doesn't really work.
No command option.
Command option.
All shift 13. All shift 7.
I love you don't know
Option Shift. Option Shift 8.
Guys,
Option Shift 8. Yeah.
yes, that's our guy. We can go home. So I would say user again dot first name. This works. And we will use this now, and we say command v.
Last name. It's a big problem with errors.
Without hyphen it is like
Complex.
last name, not that.
Name.
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 Or English.
I think it must have been because we were doing a lot of like string literals. I think that
Maybe this
gave
works.
some error.
So we can actually Control C, Command C. So this is our tries to. We tried really hard. Yeah, so this is back. So I think it's the easy. Yeah, it just works.
Yeah.
So try go back. I think maybe one of them, like the I maybe was accented
Yeah.
or something like that. Can you see that? Or something is accented.
Yeah, it's no.
I don't know. That's weird.
Yeah.
But we were doing like backticks and frontticks, so I think that was the error.
I just like if I would type user again, it would work.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there is some.
There is some ghost.
It's called the bad day. It's called the bad day.
But it's like a really good way of kind of showing, you know, how to
Yeah.
debug something like this. Just like one small step at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a bad day. It's just a bad day. It happens. So yeah, where we were? Yes, we were in this.
No, it's
You need to.
disconnect.
No, you don't need to do that. I can just kick you out.
I love how you're doing like, what's going on?
It's a bad day.
Yeah, it's a bad day.
You have been kicked out. It's just a bad day. Okay, so and instead of this doing this, we can just use this directory. Does it make sense?
This is similar to Hammers? Yeah. Hammers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sense? So this is more of a kind of a more complete thing, a more complete feature, because now we have object, and I think like in a real app you will have like an array of something, array of users, array of like Facebook, they have an array of posts. For example, the discussion in Messenger, in Facebook, it's an array of users, and it's like a boolean: is active, false, or true, if it's active or not.
I have used only one component.
Yeah.
What is the difference? Like, you have used two components.
The idea is that as your component grows, you will have more components, and these components will become specialized. And if you want to edit something or change something, you can just track that component and change it. For example, if I want to change something in the list, for example, Facebook, if they want to change something in the feed or in the Messenger, the developer, they open just one file. It's called Messenger chat header or something, and he edited. So it's more like separated code that doesn't interfere with each other, because as I said in the beginning, if you have everything in one place, good luck changing that, because you will touch everything in the JavaScript.
I know in CSS that is one extension where you take command F12, for example in user item, and then it goes to the CSS.
Yeah.
So you can change the style. But here, how can, if you want to go to the user item and you don't know where is that, so how can
You just do this. You can click on it.
Yeah.
It's just VS Code. You just like, you can see here, it's highlighting it. You just type command,
Yeah.
and you hover over it, and it will take you over there. I think it's in every editor. Yeah. Yeah, controlling windows, precisely. Make sense? Do you have any question about this? No? So now we know React, we know components, and we know props. These are the
90% of
I would say 80.
Okay.
I would say 80. So props and components. Does it make sense? Do you have any questions? Is it clear? The way we are creating components and stuff? And you can see it's just JavaScript. So some people, they had a hard time putting this inside this list of users, because it was like, curly braces and an array and stuff. Just extract it to a variable. It's just JavaScript. Do what's easy for you, not what's easy for the program. Make sense?
Yeah.
So you don't need to keep editing in variable here. Just extract it to users and use it inside.
Anyway, it's good that we are back in front end, so definitely.
So no more questions.
Before this one, I have to
Yeah, you already said that.
what we are going to discuss now.
We will discuss state.
Step
Which is
I will follow the video.
very important.
Very important, and I think that's the last kind of concept that it's a bit strange. But you should just follow in the videos. You should just follow in the video. I am recording.
Yeah. Thank you.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye. So we will discuss another topic now. So instead of really doing that, let's create a small component. And now let's make it more real life. Let's create a file. Let's create something called a counter. This is like everybody's creating counters. It's counter.js. Okay? You can see it starts with C because it's a convention. There's nothing wrong. But just usually whenever a file has a class, I start that with C, a capital letter. So it's like counter instead of small counter. And you will see in real life that there is some people use JS6 instead of JS. You'll see this. You can see the React sign there. It's the same, but JS6 means it's a file that has this weird syntax. The XML inside JavaScript, HTML inside JavaScript. So it's like an edited version of JavaScript. Because technically, if you copy this and put it in the browser, it doesn't work. So some people use these arguments to say that it's not a JavaScript file because it doesn't run in JavaScript. So it needs this step to strip it from the tags and make them create elements. So some people prefer to name these JS6. So it's JavaScript XML because this is like XML technically. Make sense? But we will do just JS. But if you will see it somewhere or something, just remember, it's a convention more than a real thing. JS or JSX doesn't change anything in the file itself. Cool. Let's import React from React. Let's say class counter extends react.component, and we have a render. Our basic thing. Cool. I will just return a button. Gamepad. Whatever VS Code, whatever you feel like today. Not my issue. So we have a button with 5, and I want to be able to import the button here. So I want to say import counter from which file? It's counter. Precisely, to be able to import something and to export it. And I would say here export default. You know the difference between default and non-default export? Do you know what this default means?
Because I think you've only seen like export in Node, right? Where it's the export
Yeah.
is different. Yeah.
So yeah, Node uses its own version of import export. It uses like import. It uses require and module.export. Yeah, that's called the CommonJS. It's the standard that's called CommonJS. But the new standard, it's called ES modules, ECMAScript modules, and it's this. So instead of saying require, you use import. Instead of using module.export, you use like export. Make sense? And the basic syntax is you are allowed to do export, and you are allowed to do export something like this. For example, you can say export const x equal 5. And here you would say, you can put an object here, like destructuring. You can take that x. Because it doesn't have a default name, it doesn't have a default keyword, you need to create an object and import x from it. So if this changes to my var, this needs to change to my var, because it's called a named export. Make sense? There's another thing called the default export. And a default export is something that it's default export, so you don't need to mention a name here, and you don't need to mention an object. You can just say my magic component. And here you are saying export default counter. It doesn't matter that it's called the counter here. You don't need to mention its name here. Why? Because it's the default export. Does it make sense? So let's say we will give it the same name, but that just by chance, just because we want to give it the same name. But there is nothing putting like we don't need to give it the same name, unless it's a named import. Make sense? Yeah. So we have counter. We want to use the counter component now. Let's say in list of users, in the top of the UL. So let's use the thing that we used before. Remember this?
Yeah.
So I can return multiple things. It's called the fragment.
And the reason for that is that we can return two.
More than one.
Yeah, more than one.
Yeah.
Okay,
You can render a list of things. Because before React only allows us to return one thing from a component. So if you want to return a list of things, you wrap them in a div. But as for now, with this fragment thing, we can render multiple things from the component straight away. For example, here we have UL and a counter. They are both top level next to each other, siblings. So you can return siblings instead of just returning one child like before. Make sense? So we have a counter component, and it just returns 5, and it's a button. We have a warning over there. You mentioned that we can discuss it, so let's do that. So the idea why we have a warning, it's because we are rendering a list of items, okay? And it's dynamic, means if I will add an item here or delete an item here, the list needs to change. Make sense? Instead of rendering 2 items, render 2 items. So let's say you have 3 items. You delete the second one. Means the third would be the second. React will be lost. Is really the third become the second or the second become the third? What happens? And to solve this issue, React introduces something called a key. So here you say key equal, you can see the warning here. Each child in a list should have a unique key. And our name is kind of unique, no? So let's say user, not name. We don't have warning anymore. Why? Because React now has an ID. So if, for example, you delete this, you delete the second one. So let's say you have Yunus 1, Yunus 2, and Yunus 3, and you delete the second one, Yunus 2. So React will know exactly which item was deleted. So it will not be confused between Yunus 2 and Yunus 3, because Yunus 3 now is taking the position of Yunus 2. It's becoming the second. But React will know that there was a second element and it was deleted because its key doesn't exist anymore. And the third is becoming the second. Why? Because it can see how the keys are shifting. Does it make sense? It's sort of an advanced feature, but sometimes it causes you troubles. But it causes you like troubles like 0.0001%. Most of the time it doesn't. So, but it's better to give it a key. And you should give it a key that describes the entity. For example, if you have a post from database, like you had before, the ID of the post is a really good candidate for the key. But you should never put a random thing. You should never put an index. Because the index, so the post tree becomes 2 and its index becomes 2, so React will be even worse confused. So yeah, give it a meaningful key, and we call it a stable key that really is coupled to the object. Yeah, I choose the name. The age, there is like more chance of collusion in the age. Maybe two users will have the same age. But for example, email, name, ID, stuff like that, there is less chance of collusion.
It's got to be unique.
Yeah, it needs to be unique. So React can see that this one was deleted, this one wasn't deleted. You know, because it's a list. So if you delete some stuff in the middle, technically the fourth would be the third.
So in the absence of, we don't have a unique, like we have multiple names.
The same names, yeah.
It's just like a primary key in a database.
Do we create a unique key for that?
Yeah, usually in a database you have a unique key, like increment, auto increment ID.
Yeah.
So you can use that for a key. I think that's the famous example of using.
I can always, I feel like sometimes it could be like, oh, yeah, I need to find a key. Like if you're rendering like a list of social media things, or maybe you can use like the name there.
Yeah.
But it's not always super easy just like to find.
No,
I'll
no.
just use the ID. Well, a lot of times you don't have just like use.
Yeah, if you have an ID, your problem is solved.
Exactly.
If you don't have an ID, you need to figure out which thing is unique. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's like. Make sense? So you can see that we render two different components now here. This one, the button and the list. And they are technically really two independent components. They don't have anything to do with each other. I think what we can even do better is delete this, and here because like it's weird to put a counter inside the list of users. Like, what's that? It doesn't make any sense. So now I extracted the counter outside, and now I'm rendering a div with the counter and list of users. Does it make sense? So we were just rendering one thing before here.
So
But we can put like a huge list here. Literally, we can copy this and put it here.
So inside the root div, we will have another div with two elements.
Yes. Yes. So technically here, so we can call this not div, but we can call it main. The HTML main. It's just, and in the elements we will have a div root, a main inside it, and a button and the UL. Make sense?
Yeah.
So let's go to the counter. My idea now is that I will have a count here. So I want the button, when I click it, it will increment. No, you click it, it will increment. So every time it will record how many clicks you did, kind of. So how I'm gonna really do that? The first thing is like if you are doing normal HTML, you will say const x equal, or let x equal 0. And you would say x here. And you have a method and you change x. Let's try to do that. So I think there is a pattern that everybody really hate and they've been like saying that we should not do, which is putting event listeners here. Like everybody says, never do that. You should
Why?
add event listener. You always use add event listener. You
Yeah.
don't want to put your logic inside the HTML.
Yeah.
You have been using add event listener for all the time.
Yeah.
But in React, we don't have that issue. So most of React developers and most React code uses inline events. Does it make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
It uses inline events. So we say on click.
Which is easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
easier, and it's also like it's simpler because the component is small. But if you have like a huge chunk of HTML and like 70 on click,
Yeah. Also
That's
if-
bad,
if you
but
have
here
10
it's small.
buttons, 10 buttons with ID, and you want, for example, to loop in each button.
Yeah.
To add an event listener, so it won't happen.
yeah, exactly.
So here.
But here we have only one button, two buttons, so it kind of, and the component is small, so it makes sense to do it this way. So here we have a method. Let's say increment, and I will put this method as part of the class. Means I will have like increment here, and this will say x plus plus, for example. Nothing is happening. Why? Exactly, it's a rendering issue. So the first time, if I will change this to 1, React will render correctly the first one with 1. But when I click the button, incremented x. But technically this component is already on the screen. So we need a way to say to React, go to the screen and this variable that changed, change it again please. So we need to re-render and re-show the component every time our variables changes. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Because now we change the variable, but the component already rendered.
Yeah. I see.
So we need to couple the variables with the component. Every time the variable changes, the component changes. Make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
And
We write return x plus plus.
but that doesn't have anything to do. If you return something from an event listener, that doesn't change anything. If you write return like here, we are not using the result of the this method anyway. This method is just called by the button. This component doesn't even know about this method.
It's about scope.
It's not really about scope. It's a new feature that we will learn now, which is like state. So now we need to hold state. What I mean by state is like a piece of state or piece of values that you are dependent on to render. Where I mean, if this change, you want to re-render. So you need to keep the values and the HTML in sync. Does it make sense? Because now we have been using props. Props, you pass them once, it's done. But now we want something that every time I click the button, I increment, I re-render. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So this is the main feature of state. This is the difference between state and props. So how we will use state? The way we use state is, the first thing, state is internal to the component. It's not something passed from outside, and it's not something everybody can see from outside. It's local to the component, no one can see, unless the component really allows you to do that. And the way you do that is by saying constructor. I don't know if you remember constructor.
Yeah.
And constructor takes something, it takes props, and you need to call super props here.
Yeah.
Why super props? Because you need to tell React component that you are about. So when you create a new counter, you need to also initialize the React component. So super means like call the constructor. So React component, it's a class because we are extending from it. React component. There is a class called React component.
Yes.
Let's just call it component. it has a constructor. You are inheriting from it. When you call super, it means you call the super of the parent component. Make sense? So just a way to tell the parent component, hey, like someone is creating an instance of me. I'm notifying you so we can do your work.
And in the React component, what does contain the constructor?
What do you mean?
To the React class component.
The React class component, the constructor does many things. Many things. It's really many things. There's many things inside the. We don't want to go in details about that, and no one needs to, because it's internal code to React. You should never be concerned with that. It's like knowing how a map works.
Yeah.
That's not our job.
Is it necessary to write super? Is it necessary?
There is some problems. If you write always constructor props, super props, you will avoid like a whole class of problems. Just do that every time, and put some spaces and write your code here. And you can say this dot state. So we want to create state. So we say this dot state. It's like this dot props. It's a special. So you cannot just name it this dot my value, unless you don't care about it. If it's, for example, if I'm having a variable, I can say this dot my name equal Yunus, but that's internal to me. But if it's something that I need to use with the React component, there needs to be a special convention about naming. So we say this dot state, and it's always an object, and you put something inside it. So for example, here I want the counter. So I will say it's 0. Make sense? In the new JavaScript, you can cut this and you can do this. You can also do this. And JavaScript will say this.state and do all the shenanigans.
So we don't need to write this constructor.
No.
Super constructor,
No.
super
No.
constructor.
Is that React again that's like transpiling that code into something?
Yes, but this is not related to React. This is just new JavaScript features. But we need to transpile it down because not all browsers support it. But this doesn't have anything to do with React.
What is it that's called? Do you know?
Class properties. So you can say class test val equal my val. You can do that. And now you can say new test. And you can say v.val. So you can just initialize the class like this instead of putting it, because usually you need the constructor and put in the constructor. So this is like just class properties. Make sense?
Yeah.
This is React, not React, but like Babel will help you transpile it back to all browsers because it's supported in Chrome, because Chrome is like super new. But all browsers, they don't support it. But it doesn't have anything to do with React itself. It's just a new JavaScript feature. Like classes, they are new JavaScript features, like promises. So this is a new feature.
So we can use this one if we are coding with React, in the JavaScript, we can use
Yeah, if it's a new JavaScript environment, you can use it, or you need to transpile it back to old browsers. Like Babel will take care of that. Class property, how it's called? Yeah, proposal. Yeah, this is the proposal. It's called field declaration and stuff. You can check it after. Yeah, it should be. It's stage 3, so it's not 100% accepted.
Okay.
It needs to be stage 4 to be. It's really new.
But do people use it at your company?
Yeah, everybody's using it.
Okay.
Every framework now is dependent on it, so it's safe. But still, it's stage 4 because it goes from stage 0 until stage 4. 4 means like we are done. Yeah, but so 3 is a bit, but it's fine. Everybody's using it. It's just about time. Yeah. So we have a state with a counter. Okay. Now, every time I want to increment, I want to increment the counter. So now I don't want to use x anymore. Instead, I want to use this .state.counter. Does it make sense? Instead of saying this .props, we say this .state.
On the increment
Yeah, we still didn't go to that, but this is the first step. Counters changed here. Now we need to change this, as you said, in the increment. How do we change it?
Counter.
Technically, you will say this dot state dot counter equal 4, for example, or plus plus. This doesn't really work because you are changing the variable inside your class. But instead, you want to tell the component that I'm changing this value, and the component will take care of rendering. Does it make sense? So you say here, there's a method called this dot set state. So it's a method. From where this method is coming? From React component. And it takes an object. And this object will be merged with this object. So if you have like val 5, and you say val 5 here, it will keep 6, it will keep counter, and it will change val. So it will just change these, replace these. So if you don't mention anything here, it will not be deleted. It will just kind of append and change the. So we don't have val, we have counter. And we want counter to be this dot state dot counter plus 1. So the new counter should be the current counter plus 1. Does it make sense? We have one more error. It will show up. Yeah. Cannot read property set state of undefined. So this is undefined and cannot read set state property. Well, so the problem is this. So this inside a class should refer to the class. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a function and the function is called by button, this refers to the button instead of the class. It's a whole subject that we can dig into in the next few weeks, but for now, there is a fix for it. It's called binding. We can explore it after, but we don't have enough time now. So you should convert it to an arrow function. So you just say a name, increment, and you give an arrow function here. And arrow functions, they have a feature that so arrow functions will say, you defined me here, so I will remember that remember it's the counter. No matter where you call me, in the button, inside the button, the increment, the arrow function will always be tied to the counter. Okay? But normal functions, they are not. Normal functions, they are like bounded dynamically. So you can call them with this, with this, with this. Just because now I don't have enough time, but next time I will have like a 20 minutes or something about binding. And you can apply and stuff like that. So this is clear. Let's try it. It works.
And what if we want to put a logic, for example, counting till 10?
Yeah, for example, you can say here, if this dot state dot counter is more than or equal 5, return. So now technically it will be stuck at 5 because we return every time. But is this clear?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Counter it to restart.
Hmm?
When it gets to 10, go back to 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, you can say, for example, here, if this dot state dot counter is more or equal than 10, else. So if it's more than 10, we say it's sorry.
Yeah.
It's 0.
Oh, plus 2.
But anyway, this is just logic. This is just if else. But what's happening here is that when you click the button, React, when you click the button itself will fire an increment function or method. I would just make it simpler. We don't want to handle logic. Inside the increment, we are calling set state with a new value. So you call set state. When you call set state, React detects that there is a change inside the state. So React goes and re-render this component. So we can stick a console.log here.
Yeah, you do not render the whole down tree. Yeah?
So for example, let's say rendering. So there is rendering for the first time because it's the first time. But if you click the button again, it's another rendering. So it fires render a second time. So every time the state changes, render will be called again. To keep the values kind of in sync. Oh, you change the state, I will re-render. You change the state, I will re-render. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And the powerful thing is that profile, no, not the profiler. Can you see the color flashing?
Yes.
What does it mean? That means like the browser is only updating the button. So the list of users is not updated because React knows that only the counter knows about the state. The list of users doesn't really know about the state, or about not the state, about the counter state, because also this component can has its own state. But this component doesn't have anything to do with the counter. So React is only updating this. You can see it here also. You can see only the button is updated. So React is smart enough to figure out what changed and what didn't change. So, does this make sense? React is like, oh, the state of counter is only used inside counter. So there is no need to update UL or users.
It compares two trees.
Precisely. So React, if every time React renders for the first time, when you change the state, React computes a different tree and compares the trees together, and it will figure out what changed, and it will only apply that change. So here React will compare the old div root, everything, with the new one, and it figure out that everything's the same except the button. So it will change the button. No, it's called reconciliation. So React will try to reconciliate the tree. Make sense?
Yeah.
Do you have any question about state? This is just a gentle introduction to state. This is not really complex. We will go into more complex details. For example, we can put the list of users inside the state, and you can have a button to add the user. Stuff like that. We can go really complex next times, but.
But this is what would you say, 90% now?
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's components and it's states.
And it's props. And this is what you'll be using every day at work.
Yeah, so
even if you have like 20 years of
and
experience.
like if you just show that you know how to work well with all these things within the next 5 months, like then you're doing well, I would say.
Yeah.
Obviously a bit more complex than this, but like these 3 concepts are what you're gonna be like working on the next 5 weeks.
Few years even.
Few years.
Yeah, like if you would be a React developer, you would be doing this for a few years.
Yeah.
Like state, you create so every day you go to work, you create a component, you put a state inside it, and you just like.
So I know a lot of your minds is probably going like, it's so different from what you've been kind of thinking about before, you know, this way to do web development. But once you get into this mindset, it makes a lot of sense, I would say.
True. And we'll try to get the mindset the next few weeks, I would say. If you don't have any questions, you sure that you don't have any? At least now? Cool. So we will discuss the homework. The homework is quite simple. So using Create React App, you will just like create a basic to-do list. So you will have like a list of to-dos. You can see for each item, render description and the deadline date. So you will have just an object with description and deadline description. And deadline is just like hard-coded date. You don't need to go new date and like shenanigan.
First name, last name.
Yeah, kind of that. So it's literally the same, just to get familiar with React. And I would really like and create 2 components, of course, each component for an item and one for the list. And I really would love if you go through the Thinking in React doc, this link. I would love if you would be able to do that because they explain a lot of things. Please go through that. Make sense?
Yeah.
So I think that's it.